Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is story about what if Naruto becomes cold after graduation part 1. Before I start, please do support for more amazing content and comments for part 2. Do consider to subscribe my channel and share my video to your friends and check out the description as well. Let's start the video. When Naruto's eyes flashed open, the smell of sickness and the second place he hated the most, after the library, obviously, the hospital, invaded into his nose. He felt as though he had chewed and swallowed something truly bitter. His eyes shut in again, trying to feel if his body was fully healed. He could move. He just felt sore. But there didn't seem to be any lingering pain from primary injuries. He tried not to think about what had brought him here, or the fact that Kakashi had carried him while he was limping through unconsciousness. The thought was traumatizing. It was emotionally taxing. Without the Kyuubi, he might have been dancing towards death at that point after a lightning cutter had rammed through his chest. The only miracle that saved him at that moment was the cursed power inside of him. He called it cursed, but it was both to him, wasn't it? It was because of the Kyuubi that he was loathed, tormented, called the demon brat, and has truly lived a miserably lonely life. But at the same time, it was the power that has saved his life. In all the death matches and difficult moments with which he had reached his limit, he's always found another gear, thanks to this power. The biggest battles have been won, and survived because of this power. Perhaps, it was not truly a curse, but in some way a blessing. A cursed blessing? Naruto blinked. Had he just hit his head or something? Had the Kyuubi decided to take over his mind? Or was it its influence? When had he started to think like this? He laughed. He laughed really hard, like a mad genin who had seen a little too much. Well, he had truly seen much, hasn't he? Not just after he became a genin, but from the day he was born. His whole life was one sad, surgically plotted trauma that no psychological medicine could ever mend. After stopping with his laugh, Naruto held out his right hand. Bandages. His whole body was bandages. And this was the result of his zealous dedication to save a friend from walking into a lustful path. This was the result. The result of loving the wrong person. Perhaps not. Naruto didn't know at this point. It was confusing. It was maddening. It was everything. But what was factual and clearly drawn in bold fonts that even an idiot like him could comprehend was that Sasuke had nearly killed him, and he had survived because of the power of the Kyuubi. The second thing was that Sasuke had chosen revenge over friends, and he was in this place because of that decision. Pained, physically and emotionally, because of someone he called best friend. It was cruel of life to do this to him. All his life. From the day he left the orphaned. Well, to say left was smoothing it a little. If he had not been kicked out for being the one person who killed the parents of the orphans, he would have most likely fled because of the brutal treatment. Those people had never seen him as an orphan, a child who only wanted to be loved. He was the murderer of many. The big bad guru of the 10th of October. Sasuke had been a friend, something he had craved and finally got. But when he had finally got it, he was here in this bed, and for the first time in his life, thinking about his sanity. Naruto. The blonde blinked as he turned to his right side, toward the entrance. Sakura was glaring at him impatiently. He hadn't heard her come in. Knowing her patience levels with him, she probably stopped short of throwing a punch because he was in bandages. For some reason, he could not smile. He really wanted to smile. Despite everything, she had been his beloved Sakura-chan. Yet, no matter how much he desired to smile at her presence, to tell her that although he had failed, he could not fail again, and he would not give up, he could not say a damn word. He could not even afford a smile. His body refused to listen. Instead, his eyes lit up slightly. Strangely, he could sense this sensation. After what felt like eternity, his lips parted and his sounded. "Hey, Sakura-chan," he started in a whisper. "Sorry, I was a bit held up in there," he said, pointing at his head, while trying but failing miserably to do his finest foxy smile. Sakura stared at him. Her irate emotion disappeared all too quickly. It was replaced by a range of emotions. Naruto had become good at reading emotions. He almost laughed at the thought. This ability seemed to have some convenience, though. He was only able to do so in a place of danger. In such situations, he was unusually blonde and dense, as he has been rightfully accused. Not that he has ever gotten it anyway. Perhaps it was because for the first time in his life, he observed and thought before speaking. Usually, he would speak without thinking much. With so many expressions flashing through Sakura's eyes, Naruto almost wanted to tell her to stick to one because she was now confusing him. What was this? The effects of using too much of the Kyuubi's power? Perhaps he has always been like this. And something had just snapped. Naruto, Sakura went silent. She was nervous. Nervous as hell. Naruto was honestly being strange. He said something and then went silent, watching her. Those blue eyes had never been so observant before. She felt like she was being stripped naked. This was not the loudmouthed idiot that she had come to know. And it was freaking her out. Her inner part just wanted to smack him in the head, and then tell him to get his act together. When had she ever seen Naruto was gloomy? Really, the air was chilling in here. Kakashi-sensei had already told her what happened. And the Tsunade had explained it in detail. To say morbid details would be true. Her displeasure of what Naruto experienced in the hands of Sasuke had been clearly expressed. For a moment, when she had tried to defend Sasuke, Sakura had thought the Godame Hokage was going to crush her with just the flick of her fingers. A terrifying moment she would never dare repeat. After a couple of moments, Sakura strengthened her resolve, and spoke. I'm sure Sasuke-kun wasn't trying to kill you. We are teammates. We will beget Sasuke. But this time, we will go after him as a team. Tsunade-sama told me that the village will keep a watch on Orochimaru's movements, and if they hear anything about him, they would send people after him. She said they didn't want to lose the Sharingan, but it was obvious that the Godame didn't like Sasuke one bit. Even the decision to try to bring him back didn't seem to be her favored cause of action. What could he say to that? Maybe it was jealousy, but Sasuke has always been the village's prince. The beloved Uchiha. It was ironic. Maybe even laughable that the loved Uchiha was the one who stabbed the village in the back and then went on to join a notorious criminal who is wanted in this village for inhumane crimes, while the pariah gets to remain loyal to a fault and hopelessly dreaming for the day the village will see him in a good light and accept him as Naruto Uzumaki, not just the Kyuubi brat. But then again, he could never run away from what he was. Perhaps he was being mad, but he was a brat, and the Kyuubi was a part of him. Naruto? This time, a smile came. He felt relieved that it came just when he really needed it. I know, Sakura-chan, he said quietly. The more he thought about it, there was no need to comfort Sakura, was there? If anything, he was the one who needed to be comforted. Although it was closed within seconds, he was the one who had a gaping hole in his chest and lying in a hospital bed, bandaged from head to toe like he was about to be mummified while still breathing. This is awkward, Sakura thought as she thought of a reason to make a quick escape. But she didn't have to think of anything, as Naruto suddenly got up and then stretched his body. When he jumped out of the bed, and walked towards the window before climbing it. He then turned to Sakura. Don't tell anyone I ran. I really want to eat some ramen now, the blonde said, smiling. She is going to find out soon enough, Sakura said. You have never been a subtle person, she said in a light tone, a small smile on her lips. Naruto smiled as he chuckled lightly, scratching the back of his head. Well, that has always been the intention even when hiding. That doesn't make sense. I know, Naruto said before jumping away. Sakura held out her right hand. She had wanted to stop him. Not that she could keep him from leaving the hospital, but to join him for ramen. Her left hand quickly slapped the hand away. What was she thinking? Was she acting out because Sasuke had left her behind? Since when did she eat ramen with Naruto, just the two of them? What were they going to be talking about while he was eating like an animal? She would be too disgusted to swallow or even look at him. Still, something seemed to have changed with Naruto. She shook her head. He would go back to normal. Being an idiot. That she could handle, but that Naruto she could not handle. Not when he was looking at her like one of those kunoichi in charge of mental evaluation. The streets of this village had been one case of despair for him. Before, he could never walk freely at this place with people staring at him with hateful glares. They still were, but not as prominent as it was before. He could now breathe. It was his simple showing at the Chunin exams. Ironically, it was a showing, helped by the power they resented. His life was an irony. What was going to happen in the future, to his tomorrow? Would he win the village's affections? When was he going to take a pause and just think something selfish? Always, he was putting others first. He was even hurt, and now had a memory of a gaping hole in his chest because he had been selfless and hopelessly stupid. He laughed inwardly. He was truly an idiot. Sasuke had not been wrong to call him an idiot. And he could not fault anyone for his stupidity. Instead of studying, learning as other children, he'd been making jokes, trying hard to be liked. Trying to draw people's affections to starve of his bitter loneliness. But loneliness was a part of him. He really should not be trying suicidal things to starve of his loneliness. And it was going to be his shadow now, since his only best friend had run, to chase his dreams. The future looked bleak. But there was hope. There was always hope. Naruto stopped as he came to the view of the Hokage monument. He held out his right hand, trying to touch the Yandame's head. He was going to get there. He was going to make it. That was his motto. Never give. Never go back on his word. He would not give up, not until he became the greatest. So great that his shadow would dwarf anyone who stands in his presence. He would become the greatest. He would make it. There was no one who was going to stop him. This was all he could do, with his miserable life of loneliness. Still, what a life awaited him. He had to face this reality. His best friend gone. The grandfather who has always loved him since birth, despite the many secrets that maddened him, the Sandaime Hokage had always been his grandfather. But now, thanks to Orochimaru, he was dead. He had lost someone dear to him. And Sasuke had gone after that very person who has caused him so much hurt. If Orochimaru had not come here, bearing his fangs, none of this would have happened. But it had happened. He could only march now. Head on to his tomorrow alone as he was. But now, he was starving. And the only thing that could fill him up was ramen. Present day. Naruto stared down at Konoha's pacey streets, the village built upon the foundations laid by Madara and Hashirama. History tends to remember the first the most than the infamous Uchiha. Yet, he was a part of history. A part of the history of this great village. Without him, this village would not have been formed. Both Uchiha and Senju were the most powerful clans in the warring tides. Their peace forced others to join in. No one wanted to be their enemies. It was best to join them. It was truly sad that, despite their greatness, both clans were mere memories now. There were just 2 Uchiha remaining, well, 3 counting the one who released the Kyuubi the night he was born. Shaking his head, Naruto placed his hands inside the pockets of his pants. He hadn't come back to this village to admire anything about it. Despite everything, the treacherous treatment, he had been born into this village, its hero, even though ignorant people failed to recognize. If it had not been his father, his mother, and him being born into that night, this village might have been reduced to ruins, just like his ancestral home of Uzushio. After disappearing from the Hokage monument along gusts of winds, Naruto appeared at the memorial stones. He did not stand where the Yondaime laid to rest but where the Sandaime Hokage rested. The old man had been his only family when growing up. But there had been lies. Now, Naruto wondered just how much of what the old man told him had been the truth. He wondered if the Sandaime had even loved him. But Jiraiya had said it again and again that the old had loved him. Yet, it was the same old man who allowed him to live his whole life being called a demon, a murderer, without telling him that the Kyuubi was sealed within him. He had let him live like he had simply dropped off the sky, when he had been birthed by Konoha's hero. Reasons be damned. No one had a right to keep from him about just who his parents were. If he had known, maybe he might not have been so miserable. At least, he would have known that he did have a mother who loved him. This was his life, his journey. One filled with lies and pain. Treachery even. There was nothing wrong he did. He just had to be a child of Kushina and Minato, and had a grandfather figure who preferred lies than the simple truth. Why hadn't he shouted when Mizuki told him the truth? Maybe he hadn't done anything then because he had been happy to know that even Irika-sensei cared for him, even knowing about the Kyuubi. He could have even been afraid of losing the Sandaime Hokage. 2 masked shinobi flashed behind him without warning. Naruto's eyes only narrowed ever so slightly, and then stared back at the stone. Well, at least then, he did have someone he could speak with, and some things were better with the Sandaime Hokage. Tsunade-sama has summoned you. Impatient woman, it was apparent that the Godaime Hokage had not worked on her patience issues. It was not like he had run off or done anything wrong. He was here. She just had to wait for him to catch his breath before seeing her. Sighing, Naruto nodded and then closed his eyes. Could he still visualize the office? Could he got there? The short-distance teleportation required he see where he had to go, and then he could just disappear within the blink of an eye, without any trace. There would be a gentle breeze upon his disappearance. And then there was Hokage office. Tsunade didn't know what to say. The child she had last saw, filled with innocence, wearing a cheerful smile, had been replaced by a man. He was fully grown, cheeks flat, right hand fully bandaged. The orange jumpsuit was replaced a dark orange coat with black stripes and dark blue shinobi pants, along with a long-sleeved t-shirt with the Uzumaki symbol along the chest. He truly looked like a proper shinobi. How long has it been? 3 years since she last him? In the shinobi world, 3 years was a long time. You could even go for a simple mission and never even come back. Every day was worth enjoying and living, because if you did not, you never know when the last one was going to come. You didn't tell me you'd be returning today, Tsunade said in a flat tone. Even getting a response from him, if a letter did manage to find, had been difficult. He was supposed to have returned to the village some time ago. I didn't think there was a need, Naruto then smiled. Besides, I wanted to surprise you. If you'd simply frozen in shock over seeing me, I would have had an easier path at becoming Hokage, he added with a slight shrug. Did he not understand that the situation was dangerous for him in the village? She didn't care that he didn't speak about the Hokage position with the same energy as before when she had come to collect her along with Jiraiya. He was grown now. She banged her hand on her desk, expressing her anger, disapproval, and frustrations. You refuse to listen to orders to return to the village. That is insubordination. Do you know what happens to insubordinate shinobi? Not the reaction he would have expected. Jiraiya tells me that you are not the same stupid brat that you once were, so I will make this very clear to you and I will tell it to you once. You are not the most trusted person in the village, and the fact that you were on your own, most of the time, and refused to come back when ordered to do so, has created some tensions amongst the clans. It had been suggested that you be brought back to the village by force after your refusal. Naruto raised an eyebrow. That was honestly not something he had expected. But then again, was it really a surprise? From what he has come to learn, politics in this village work very differently. Still, what had he done for them to think he would betray this village? Hasn't it been this village that not only betrayed its greatest Hokage but also betrayed him? I suppose you stood firm, Naruto said in a quiet tone. He bowed slightly. You have my thanks. I guess I have put you under undue pressure by my actions. You guess? Tsunade snapped, glaring heatedly. Naruto held up both his hands, smiling apologetically. At least on the bright side of things, I know that you will always have my back, Bachan. There are not a lot of people to trust in this world, and just returning to know that I can always trust you makes me happy, Naruto said with a foxy smile, with a hand at the back of his head, just to lighten up the mood. Tsunade paused. Those words were touching. It was sad, really, that the child of one of Konoha's Hokage had to feel like this, atop of the great burden that he carried within. The anger that had been bubbling within her dispersed quickly as it was replaced by a look of concern. True, she had faced of some political attacks and the situation was delicate around Naruto, but he still suffered enough in this village. If he had been able to stand free while away, even in her anger, she welcomed it. I'm just glad that you returned safely, Naruto. I was worried about you, especially given the state of mind when you left the village, Tsunade said quietly. I hope your training was successful and you learned a lot. Of course, Naruto said with a toothy grin. It was my goal to train to become strong. I still want to become the greatest. If I'd remained as weak as I was, my dream would have been a pipe dream, he said firmly. You haven't aged a bit. I trust the job has treated you well. It's a pain, Tsunade exclaimed. What happened to your hand? A bit of accident, Naruto said dismissively. I will give you a report about my years away later. I'm sure Jiraiya has already furnished his. He has, Tsunade said. She then paused, trying to study his expression. There wasn't much to tell. He was reserved, and just like how he was when he left. She wondered, though, what were his thoughts about Sasuke. The Uchiha has been seen around with Orochimaru's people, roaming around the shinobi world doing some dirty works for her former teammate. On the occasions that he did meet with Jiraiya, he must have been told about it. But the Toad Sage never said anything about it in his report. Tsunade decided to be on the safe side and not talk about it unless the blonde started or the situation forced it. I will wait for your report before putting you back on duty for service. Naruto nodded and then disappeared from the office. The cursed home that housed him for his childhood. He was just a brat, and yet, he was living by himself, receiving an allowance from the Sandaime Hokage. But how could he eat nice things? How could he even get the best care of supplies when people either overpriced him or outright refused to sell to him? His childhood was one miserable fate he'd been tossed into. There was nothing he could change about it. Still, how brutal was for the Sandaime to put him in this cold palace when his father had left a house, purely intact. The Kyuubi rampage had not touched it. The invasion from the Sound had not touched it. At least as far as Jiraiya had explained to him. Naruto just stood in the kitchen, motionless. There was nothing really he could take here. Aside from ramen actually, but aside from that, there was nothing. This place would remain like this. Perhaps when he was feeling sentimental, he would return to sleep here. There was a hole inside of his heart, and this place could remind him of the many miserable nights he had, alone, bundled up in that bed wishing he had a mother to give him comfort, to whisper to his ears that she loved him and all would be well. He had wished for the nights and days he could simply return home to someone, to tell them about his day at the academy, but he had no one. There was no one to comfort him when he had a nightmare. He could only stay in a corner, covered in a blanket, miserable, and yet when tomorrow came, he would have to shove it all in the back of his head and pretend as if he was fine by wearing a huge grin that would make the Kyuubi giggle with excitement over just how fake he was. Just being here was making him miserable already. Why did you even return to this village? The deep voice from within, bored perhaps. Or maybe it was just a projection. Naruto could never really tell what the Bijou was thinking. It has over time told him, repeatedly, that it was nothing but hate. And there was truly nothing more than contempt in its eyes, even for him, for using its power, for keeping it locked up. This is my home. I was born into this village. Besides, if I end up leaving, Sasuke will just say that I am following after him. I would rather not let that bastard think I am running after him. And I don't want to live the rest of my being on the run. Konoha was not going to allow the treasured bijou to fall into any other village. They would never permit it. Besides, it would defeat his purpose. The reason he had even left along with Jiraiya in the first place. Then be miserable, the Kyuubi said. Just like you, Naruto shot back. Since when have you cared about my well-being? I don't, but I am merely curious about your decision. Humans never change. They will never accept you. Even if they do today, the moment you do one little wrong that strokes their fears, they will turn on you. The bijou said in a measured tone before admitting honestly. Besides, if we are outside the village, things become much simpler for me. Naruto didn't need to think what the bijou meant by that. He knew, it meant escaping. While in this village, there was a chance of being resealed if it ever came close to escaping from the seal. It was already weakened. The ghost of the Yondaime Hokage had come to strengthen it after he nearly let it loose, but his chakra was no more. And Jiraiya refused with the key that his father said he had created to release the Kyuubi from its cage for him to be able to release the power. Perhaps it was trust issue, but that refusal had hit home. But the toads were especially the ones who didn't want to release it over some fears. Perhaps it was because he had nearly died, and released the Kyuubi into this world before the ghost of the Yondaime saved things that they were truly afraid. There is no master of Fuinjutsu in this village, well, aside from Jiraiya and perhaps Danzo. But I doubt Jiraiya has the capabilities to seal you. The necklace that Tsunade had given him was crushed long time ago. It had done the trick a couple of times, but the Kyuubi had finally gotten around it and snapped it into pieces. Naruto ended up deciding against cleaning up the cupboards. He had to go out in stealth mode. He didn't want to deal with the reaction of the villagers on this day. Not before he was able to fully rest in his father's house. The home that would have probably filled a void in his heart had these people not decided to keep it from him. Even Jiraiya would have probably not said anything to him. He had confronted the Sannin when the ghost of the Yondaime had appeared before him to strengthen the weakening seal. The safe houses his father had were destroyed. But this house was just fine. At least from the looks of it on the outside. It really looked normal. Then again, his father was not from a clan. He had been merely an orphan. The Sandaime Hokage had a compound. He was from the Sarutobi clan. Naruto saw a flash of a memory, him running outside, with his mother chasing him. Another with him rushing to welcome his father from another hard day in the office, with his mother leaning against the door frame, watching as her boys hugged happily. Later, she would yell at them for not wanting to bath or washing their dishes as they tried to make time for father and son moments, which were not often because of his father's work. The thoughts, the ifs, it made him hesitant to go into the house. Maybe he was just going to be miserable in there. Maybe he would only dream about the life he could have had if both his parents had not died. After a long minute, Naruto forced the door open. There was dust everywhere. No one was taking care of it. Yet, he didn't notice much of it. He would even lie on the cold floor, regardless of how dirty it was, because this was home. His parents had breathed the air here. They had laughed, planned and thought of how they were going to raise him in this house. This was the life he could have had. But he was denied. Naruto wanted to cry. But the tears would not come out. When had he stopped crying? Long ago. When he had been just a little boy. He had realized, if he did not, he would have been miserably crying every night. And worst of all, there would have been no one to comfort him, no one to wipe off his tears and tell him it was going to be all right. After a couple of minutes, Naruto finally decided to look around the house. There were 3 bedrooms, a large kitchen, and a dining room. There was a sitting room, an office and a weapons room, along with an underground training hall, warded with seals and with those 3-pronged kunai stabbed all over it. The room that had left him motionless, and in dreamland, was the room with the crib. A very large crib, suited for him, a prince in his parents' lives. He would have had many nights in it. Crying for their attention, crying because he needed to go, or just because he felt like crying. But he didn't have any of it. None. He had been forced to live in an orphanage, and then an apartment with a careless landlord. In the orphanage, when a demon cried, it had to be either hit or sent into a cold dark room until it stopped crying. Because no one had the heart to love it. To care for it. Hiruzen had been naive. Why had he not just not announced it? His mother had lived comfortably because no one had known she was a Jinchuriki. Perhaps he trusted too much on stupid people to look past their hate and see the work their Kage had done. Had he told them, this is Minato's son, he made him a Jinchuriki, to contain the Kyuubi, to save this village, to save all you, that you may have a future while his life ended, and he has died, leaving his son an orphan, hoping that you may become his parents. Maybe then, things would not have been so miserable. But what was he thinking? Hate was truly a powerful thing. He shook his head. That was the past. This was now. Naruto created clones, sent them out to begin the clean out. He needed to make sure the electricity was still working. The fridge was empty and dead, the cupboards didn't have any food in them. He would have to go out and buy some. He wondered, how was the service going to be? Perhaps things would be different. While the clones cleaned, Naruto went outside through the back door. There was a very small and modest garden, or at least it once was. Yet he didn't feel like taking something to remove the weeds that he may bring back its glory. He just settled down and laid on his back, eyes closed. They were not closed for more than 5 minutes before Jiraiya welcomed himself, and then settled on his left side. I thought you were still in the lightning country, sensei. Naruto asked without opening his eyes. You reek of alcohol. I don't want to hear that from you. There had been moments I found you drunk, lying in some corner with a man, the Sannin said with a glare. Perhaps it was a coping mechanism. All shinobi had one. The blonde was not a drunk, but he did have his days of drinking, and he didn't just take a taste. He really drank until he couldn't even stand. Naruto winced at the memory. Please don't remind me. I dare not think about what could have happened that night, the blonde said. Jiraiya only smiled. It would have made a great piece for my book, the Sannin said. I left the lightning some time ago. There was nothing interesting happening. Naruto snorted. You probably got yourself kicked out of the country for doing something lecherous, the blonde said. Maybe it was his copying mechanism. The real world had too many troubles that naive people failed to see. People died every day. The art of murder was no trivial thing, but shinobi were faced with that choice whenever there was a mission. Sometimes living a life of ignorance saved you from the pain and the despair that came with being a shinobi, a trained killer. Jutsu were not simply designed for defending, they were for killing. Why did these villages opt to make Jinchuriki weapons? For the simple purpose for wreaking havoc along enemy lines, leaving only despair and destruction in their wake. He could thank Hiruzen. Because of him, the lustful madmen of this village had not wormed their way into his life to produce Konoha's most powerful weapon. Jiraiya stared at Naruto for a moment. He knew their relationship was not that great. But being here must have been an emotional journey for Naruto. For him, it brought many memories he had buried and the regrets of his failure to protect his favored pupil. If he had done things differently, he would be having another pupil to follow after his dreams, but Naruto was following his dreams. When they had spoken about peace, the blonde had simply said, Why would I think of peace in the shinobi world when I have no peace in my heart? Not to mention, there is no peace for me in Konoha. It was a response that hit hard. But the truth, even though it was something he would have never willingly confronted head-on. I'm truly happy that you have returned home, Naruto, the Toad Sage said with a smile. I must have told you that had things not changed sooner, we may have been forced to use force. I know that would have been unfair to you, but I don't need to tell you that this life is not fair. She only told me that there had been calls to use force, Naruto said in thought. It would have been a twisted turn of events for him to be declared a missing nin. He didn't want that cloud hounding him. He needed to be free. Anywhere he went, they would only welcome him because he brought the power of the most powerful Bijou. But honestly, I am not too thrilled that I am home. Perhaps I resent this place a little, but my greatest challenge is being alive with my burdens, my dreams, and the shadow of the Kyuubi hanging over me. I resisted coming back earlier because I was afraid of what would await me, the blonde said in a quiet tone. At least, even though there were issues, Naruto still talked to him. Within 2 months, after he had left the blonde alone in a town, they had already gone their separate ways. He found the blonde 5 months later. He hadn't tried to run, but merely surprised that it took so long for him to find him. He had been merely training, and pointed out that despite spending a month with him, he hadn't learned anything hard, and Jiraiya's obsession has always been for him to be able to use the Kyuubi's chakra. Flashback. The past months had been nerve-wracking. Jiraiya had been experiencing hell. There had been many nights he saw the ghost of Kushina chasing him with murderous intentions. There was no telling what could have happened to the blonde. He didn't know. Nothing had been said. He had suddenly just returned, and suddenly, the blonde was gone. No word, but his clothes had been packed, his only hope. He hadn't told Tsunade. She would murder him. His fears were that something bad could have happened after Naruto left. Naruto didn't know the elemental nations, and yet, he had simply vanished without a trace. He had even gone to the cloud to see if they had not abducted him. The Raikage's thirst for power was unmatched. His hope had returned when one of his spies had informed him that they saw someone like Naruto training in an abandoned town. Jiraiya had quickly rushed like lightning. There had been many false hopes before. The months had felt like years. He may have even aged drastically over the period of uncertainty and nail-biting tense months. The only clue that made him rush was that there had been a clue of the menacing chakra of the Kyuubi. His fears had compounded then. Anything could happen. Naruto had been depressed then. When Jiraiya arrived at the town and walked into a clearing, he would have went on his knees and sent a message to Kushina that she had found her son, but the situation before him was alarming. His hair stood up, his guard went to maximum security. His instincts screamed at him for the danger that lay ahead. His heart pounded heavily, as his thoughts ran wild, thinking of the worst possible scenario. There had been many worse moments in his life, but not like this one. He had clearly found Naruto, but their blonde was standing there motionlessly inside a large crater shirtless. His usually short hair was a little long, his body full of cuts, and the unmistakable presence of the Kyuubi was clearly felt. It made him afraid. Afraid that he was looking at the Bija, then Naruto. What reinforced his fears were the silted crimson eyes, the cold look in them, the fangs peeking slightly under his lips, and the sharp whisker masks. What made him nearly jump were the words that came next. "I have been waiting for you, human. You will humor me with a test to see my limits while constrained in this meat suit." Jiraiya tensed, and immediately took a stance. The Kyuubi could not have broken free of the cage and then took over Naruto's body, could it? The seal was designed in such a way that such a reality was possible. Jiraiya was afraid. "And Naruto?" he asked in a whimper. Naruto grinned, revealing sharp teeth, folding his clawed hands across his chest. "Try again." Jiraiya's eyes widened and he took a single step backwards. "Naruto! Can you hear me?" he shouted, a little pale. "Yes, Ero Sennin." Jiraiya blinked. What followed then was a loud laughter from Naruto. He was even on his butt laughing. Looking closely, he was back to normal. Well, the animalist characteristics were now gone. The Sannin frowned. That hadn't been funny. He had been truly frightened. What was this? First the blonde leaves him without saying a damn word and then now scares him by making him think that he was being controlled by the Kyuubi? Jiraiya wanted to rave and rank, but Naruto was laughing. He was truly laughing. It was not a mad laughter, but a truly person laughing hard. When was the last time he saw the blonde laughing? Not since they left Konoha, and certainly not after Sasuke drove a Chidori through his chest. "You should have seen the look on your face, sensei," Naruto exclaimed as he stood up, walking toward the sage. Jiraiya glared. "Are you going to tell me why you ran? Do you know how worried I was when you didn't find you?" Screw that Naruto was happy. Jiraiya was honestly angry that Naruto was making light of the situation. He could have been attacked while away from him. Naruto stopped walking for a moment and stared at the Sannin before shrugging. "I wanted to show you that I don't need you, sensei. Besides, in the first week alone and away from you, I learned much more than I have learned from you. In the battle with Neji, I realized just how flawed my fighting style was. In my victory against Gaara, it was simply the raw power of the Kyuubi that pulled me through, and not my skills. Kabuto was right when he said I had no skills. Even Sakura has a more refined fighting stance than I do. You saw that, even before my battle against Neji, and yet you failed to correct that. Kakashi-sensei failed me? Do you want to fail me as well?" Jiraiya froze. Those words pummeled him like Tsunade's punches. They were cold, and the hard truth. He could have done better. There was a chance that Naruto could have fought both Gaara and Sasuke in the Chunin exams, and what could he have done any better? Naruto was slow, too slow. In an all-out battle with Sasuke in that stage, where he could not use much of the Kyuubi's chakra, he would have lost. A summoning would not have been an ideal thing at that stage. He smiled bitterly, thinking of Naruto's fighting style. He realized, maybe that man would have done a better job. He may not have given Naruto the tools to use the Kyuubi's chakra, but he certainly would have driven home the basics and formed a foundation in which Naruto could have developed into a proper shinobi. "You have a point," Jiraiya bitterly admitted. "I will take your training seriously, but promise me that you will not mention this to Tsunade, and you will not run away again." Naruto smiled. "Of course, sensei. And from now on, you will pay for everything. I will simply train." "Pay with what money?" Naruto only smiled and asked. "When do we begin with the real training?" "Sometimes, no matter what you do, people, or at least many, will never change. Hatred is such a strong emotion that completely blinds you from reality. I know you understand this better. You have lived your entire life breathing it, harboring it within. I won't give you answers, not that he hadn't tried before. He had done so, before, and they had been rejected. Naruto was not looking for a god in his life, but a friend, someone who could offer honest opinions based on reality, not some fantastical ideologies that even he could not cope with. But you know yourself better than anyone else. You are strong. You lived in this village despite everything being hurled toward you without losing your mind. You survived the worst, being lied to, being betrayed. I know you will live to the best to achieve your dream, the Sannin then grinned. Who knows, maybe one day, your father's shadow may become too small for you. Naruto chuckled lightly. I think I was insane long time ago. I learned to completely mask my pain, my loneliness from everyone when I was just a child. But whenever I returned home, alone, there would be no one. I would be alone, there would be no one to see me. My misery would just pour out. Do you know the despair of sitting at home, late at Friday, eating the same meal you've had for the past 7 days, not knowing what to do tomorrow because, really, you don't have a single friend, everyone else shuns you, those who accept you, just end up sending you to the forest of death. And ultimately you resort to pranks, for amusement and attention, because you are crying for the village to start acknowledging, just that you exist, not anything else, but that you are alive. If Jiraiya said he knew, he would be lying. He didn't know the despair. He could only guess what must have been on Naruto's mind. Worst, he could have done something about it. As the blonde's godson, he could have taken him out of the village to prepare him mentally. He could have been around to show the blonde that there was someone who loved him. He could have done something, but he did not. He did nothing but just watched, feeling sorry for himself. Maybe did not deserve calling himself Naruto's godfather. We all should have done better to ensure that you did not suffer as you did, Jiraiya said in a bitter tone after a long minute of silence. I shouldn't have expected the old man to do everything. He already too much on his plate. The Sannin swallowed hard before glancing the round of weeds that had taken residence in the garden. The Sandaime had managed to at least look after this place while he was still alive, but with him now dead and no thanks to his former teammate, no one was looking after it. Naruto smiled. He stopped short of laughing. His thoughts were bitterly amusing after all. I want to say the past is the past, but it was the past that shaped into what we are now, he said before releasing a long breath. Well, we shall see what happens in the coming days. But there had never been doubt on my return, he said in a firm tone. Then, what brought you running all the way from the Cloud Country? We need to talk about Orochimaru and his student, Jiraiya said in a hardened tone. I know this is still a touchy subject. It is not, I just prefer not to talk about it, Naruto cut in before Jiraiya could finish talking. What has he done now? Or is it perhaps Sasuke you are concerned about? I can't say I am concerned, Jiraiya stressed. But the village is concerned. He has recently been making too many movements. My guess is that he is still chasing after Itachi. The infamous Uchiha. He was truly an interesting person. Flashback. You're a hard person to track down, Naruto-kun. Naruto nearly fell from the tree branch he had been lying on when he suddenly heard the voice. He hadn't felt or sensed the presence, but when he heard the voice, he now sensed the presence. Who could walk upon him like that? When he looked down, he saw those blood-red eyes of the Uchiha, and realized he was dealing with what apparently was Sasuke's older brother. He immediately looked away to avoid being caught in a genjutsu. His skills were still lacking in a very offensive way. He made ready to make a run for it. If this person could sneak up on him so easily, he was surely not going to fare well in a battle against him. I'm not here to attack you, Itachi said, seeing the subtle defensive movements. There is no need to look away. You are already in my genjutsu. Naruto blinked and then frowned deeply. After 2 full years of training with clones in a training regime that was worth more than 10 years, he would have thought he would be able to tell the difference between reality and genjutsu. It was massively disappointing. But when had he been caught in the genjutsu? Shaking his head, Naruto decided to ask. What do you want? I want to talk to you about my brother Sasuke. Naruto's frown deepened. What about him? End of flashback. Naruto glanced at Jiraiya through the corner of his eyes. What has the village decided? No, it should be obvious. The village still wants Sasuke back. But if Sasuke continued on his path, things could get to the point where he could be beyond saving, not unless the village was willing to pick fights with others. Orochimaru was a criminal. If Sasuke pissed off other villages, they would go after his head and Konoha would get drawn to it. There is the issue of Orochimaru's intentions to make Sasuke his host, Jiraiya said. In terms of security, that is the biggest worry. If Orochimaru succeeds, he will become very powerful, and his reign of terror will only continue unabated. It will only cause chaos in this world. We have to stop it before it gets to that point. It was not like many people have not yet suffered because of Orochimaru. But of course, this village would only worry if it became a subject to his threats. Not that he hadn't already led an invasion that resulted in the Sandaime Hokage dying. I doubt Sasuke will have gone to Orochimaru with any intentions of allowing himself to become a host. Orochimaru is weak at the moment, and Sasuke is a cold bastard with a superior complex. He only went to Orochimaru for power, and once he sees he has had enough and believes himself to be superior to Orochimaru, he is going to move his way, Naruto explained with a bit of indifference. What do you want me to do? I will tell you once you have resettled and have been put back on active duty. At the moment, you are just a genin who is off duty, Jiraiya said, while mocking the fact that Naruto was still a genin. The only genin in his group. Naruto blinked with shock. Hell! He exclaimed. How come I didn't get promoted for my showing at the Chunin exams? I did more than anyone in my generation, and some jonin. My efforts should have been recognized. No doubt, if it was Sasuke, he would have received a full paid promotion with badges and a royal procession to officially crown him Crown Prince of the Hidden Leaf. I thought rankings didn't matter to you, Jiraiya said with amusement. Naruto glared for a second before getting. I guess I must rack up hard missions to get that promotion. To think that I would become the lowliest ranked of those people. At this stage, even Konohamaru might have a higher rank than me, Naruto said with a slight shake of his head. What else? There is one of Orochimaru's former lieutenants. She is rumored to have fled from him. I am busy looking for her whereabouts. If we find her, we might be able to learn more about Orochimaru's objectives and be able to track his movements, Jiraiya said as he stood up. I have already warned you about Danzo. But I want you to be careful of him, Naruto. Don't trust him. Stay as far away from as possible. Naruto nodded. Just tell me this before you leave, the blonde said. How are things in this village? Jiraiya shook his head. You will find out eventually, but you will realize that things have changed in many ways than one. Tsunade tossed a hard stare at Jiraiya the moment he landed on her window, smiling stupidly. Perhaps he was trying to soften up the mood, but she really had no reason to be happy about his presence. The Godane placed down the report she had and leaned to her chair. Hard decisions had to be made in this village. When it comes public knowledge that Naruto is the son of Minato, there was going to be shock going through the village. External factors in the fire capital would come to play. No doubt, those people would demand to know why the son of a man who saved the leaf had been hidden away. At least it would be laughable to see his reaction when he realizes just how this village treated the son of a man they worshipped. Their ignorance to the fact could not be excused as a valid reason. With Naruto back in the village, the political factors that have been working behind the scenes with frustratingly impressing efficiency were going to be at full force now, and she would have to deal with it. More challenging was Naruto's situation. He may have returned, but his UMBU evaluation risk factor still named him a flight risk. As it has always been since he was a little brat. Of course, her sensei had concealed such reports from never seeing the light again to avoid predators like Danzo from taking any action that would have been detrimental to Naruto's well-being. Not that being left to live a normal benefited him in any way. I thought your report was exaggerating things. A part of me truly wishes that he would revert back to normal once he was out of the village, Tsunade said after a couple of moments of silence. Jiraiya nearly rolled his eyes. He didn't show this to Tsunade. Naruto had explained to him in detail the treatment, the pain that he suffered. There was nothing normal about Naruto's life. Do you prefer him wearing a mask every day of his life when in front of people and then being miserable when he goes back to his apartment? Because for Naruto, that was the normal thing in this life. Tsunade flinched. What people saw wasn't always the truth. She should have known better. But he had looked genuinely happy when he came to convince her to return to this village. He had been stubbornly stupid and brave. I guess that episode was the last straw, she said with a slight shake of her head. What do we do now, Jiraiya? Jiraiya shrugged. I'm not too concerned, he said. And then smiled. Naruto is a lot more appreciative of the things he has in his life. He isn't the naive brat who always trusted everyone and refused to see the evil in people. There are some red flags, but he is capable of watching over himself, but he needs to refamiliarize himself with friends, and be with people he can trust. But you can't force him to do it. Aside from that, we can only offer him support. Tsunade was silent for a moment before responding. We have to protect him, Jiraiya. And we will, Haim. I have failed him before, I won't do it again. I know the politics in this village have changed after the invasion, but nothing will happen to him. Perhaps Danzo could call it a coup, and Hayashi would call it the greatest thing that has happened since the demise of the Uchiha clan. The clan heads had more power now. Hayashi was able to flex his political muscles as being the strongest clan in the village now. The Hyuga have always been politically powerful, but not like this. They now even wanted to revive the military police force and run it. They argued that their Byakugan made them the perfect guardians of the village's security. Had they been in charge, the incident that saw Sasuke leave the village through the gates would not have happened, or the fact that it seemed possible for illegal people to come in and go without the UMBU knowing. They had made some valid arguments, but the intentions were not entirely pure. It was the mess that resulted from the invasion. And there had been pressure to make Tsunade pay for what happened. The freak of nature called Danzo had even proposed invading the sand. But the village would have surrendered quickly as it no longer had a Kage, and its supposed weapon was defeated by a dead last of the hidden leaf. But Tsunade had stood firm to the pressure, and reminded everyone she was the Hokage. In her silence, Sakura walked into the office with a stack of papers from the hospital. The girl had grown over the years. She had become a far better student than Shizen. Her learning ability was truly amazing. It had taken some doing to get to grow, but she was still a child and the world still turned upside down whenever there was a mention of Sasuke. But overall, she had truly become a kunoichi she was proud to call her pupil. Jiraiya-sama, Sakura's eyes lit up slightly at seeing the Sannin. Every time she saw the man, it was always news about either Sasuke or Naruto. She had missed both her teammates, and really wanted to see them. She would show them that she was no longer the burden that she once was. Sakura, Jiraiya greeted the girl with a smile. I will be leaving later on today, Haim. I had just come to see if Naruto had settled. But you just returned. There is something I am following regarding Orochimaru's movements and the troubles brewing between IWA and Kumobikure. And just like that, the Sannin disappeared in a puff of smoke. Before Tsunade could even say anything, Sakura was in her face with huge eyes. Naruto is back? She asked with excitement. Tsunade smiled. She looked like a little girl who has been waiting for her parents to come back from work to play with her. Yes, she said. Naruto returned earlier. Does this mean that Team 7 is going to come back together? We can look for Sasuke better, she said. Team 7 is still a member short, Tsunade said. And that is a discussion that is for another day. Now, what about this? Oh, these are the cases that you said you wanted to look at, Sakura said, a little put off by Tsunade's response. Tsunade nodded. Her focus was now on what she was going to read, given that there seemed to be something going on that gave her an itchy feeling and that pervert had left before she could tell him about it. Tsunade didn't know what to call it. Aside from some people disappearing, there was an admission of genin suffering from chakra poison. Even some experienced shinobi were suffering from this epidemic. Tsunade didn't want to think that someone was doing experiments in this very village. The changes Jiraiya had warned him about had certainly not affected his beloved ramen. It was still good as it was, as his tongue recalled. The smell still caused his mouth to water with anticipation and his guts to grumble with impatience. Everything else could change and he could adapt, but not ramen. There were more Hyuga running around in hidden places and some in plain sight, just like when the Uchiha ran the streets, but that he could live with, even though he has never been favored by the clan. Had his beloved food changed, Naruto would have been forced on an unprecedented hunger strike until the flavor he so loved returned. For him, ramen was more than just food. It held sentimental value. This was the food he had been able to eat when everyone else rejected him. He could afford this. These people had even allowed him to eat for free when he had no money after being overcharged for a service. For all his moods, sad, angry, lonely and even hungry, there was a dish for ramen that would make him feel at ease. Nutritional balance could be damned, ramen had all the ingredients. Boss. He was on his fifth bowl when the familiar voice called him out with so much excitement that he stopped devouring his food for a moment to glance at the boy on the sides. Konohamaru, his perverted subordinate. Naruto smiled, waving his right hand. Even when his sensei had been strict in trying to separate the boy from him, even when he had no skills to talk about, he wasn't the brightest, this boy had looked up to him. He had respected him. Not everyone could hate you. Not everyone was cruel to the core. There were people like Konohamaru who believed in your dreams, and reminded you of them every day. To be alive was worth it. To have connections with people was of importance. It is really you! Konohamaru exclaimed, dashing toward the blonde. He stopped just inches away, looking excitedly happy as if he was ready to explode like a filled-up balloon. I have missed you. He held himself from jumping on the boss. I have missed you too, my unruly subordinate, Naruto said, ruffling up the boy's hair with his left hand. He then turned to his ramen. He didn't want it to get cold. He could finish up quickly. His head snapped up once more when he realized something. Konohamaru was wearing a headband. Wow, Konohamaru, you became a genin. Of course. Konohamaru responded with a grin. I couldn't stay an academy student forever. I have to advance and become stronger so that I can beat you into becoming Hokage. Naruto smiled. You may even succeed in that, he said, pointing at his chest. We are apparently of the same rank. Konohamaru blinked. You're still a genin? He exclaimed with shock. Naruto chuckled lightly, seeing the expression of shock. Yes. Konohamaru settled after a couple of moments before waving his right hand. Rankings are overrated. These people don't appreciate you, and I-chan. Brother, huh? A child was so innocent. It was a sweet thing, but now as he looked at it, a little sad. The shinobi world was nothing like this. But with time and experience, he would eventually learn. No shinobi remain ignorant to the true horrors of this world, not unless you were kept sheltered from leaving the village. Even just going outside, you could see some extreme things that made you realize the true cruelty of the human heart. I want to show you something, boss. Naruto raised an eyebrow. The moment he had seen him, it had become apparent that there was something that the kid wanted to show him. Naruto hoped it was a jutsu of some kind rather anything else weird. Konohamaru had been privately tutored. He shook his head. Well, thanks to his influence, the boy had bunked those lessons and had to be chased down by that perverted sensei who called himself an elite, but he was just an overrated shinobi with some self-inflicted high self-esteem because he was hired to tutor the Hokage's grandchild. Naruto nodded and finished eating his ramen. He paid before departing to a training ground, the familiar ground he had shared with Team 7. Being here brought so many memories. The good and the bad. There had certainly been good moments. He had been home. Had teammates and friends he could trust for the first time in his miserable life. Sasuke had at once nearly died for him after all, but he was corrupted by the lust for power. A power-hungry fool who needed to be beat up to a pulp. Even Itachi was so disappointed. Though, as he pointed out to the elder, given that he murdered his entire clan, he was not the one to say. Naruto thought he had seen something flash in Itachi's eyes then. It better be a cool new jutsu. Konohamaru nodded vigorously before doing hand seals. Oriki no Jutsu. In a puff of smoke, the thing he had once been infamous for doing occurred. Naruto stared expressionlessly hard for a moment before bursting out in laughter. And he had expected something different, not this. He shook his head. What was he thinking? Konohamaru was just as much of a pervert as his grandfather. Still, to think he would have learned to develop this jutsu by himself. His senseis at the academy must have been terrorized daily by this. He laughed just thinking of Irika falling on his behind with a nosebleed while thinking naughty things. Naruto grinned. This is nothing, he said. I have something even better, he said, holding a single hand seal. Naruto suddenly took a flashy step forward with his eyes narrowed behind, while taking out a kunai. He then twisted around, flashing behind a baffled Konohamaru. He picked up the boy by his shoulder, putting him behind. Within a second, a white tiger lunged at him, teeth bared. He took a huge backward jump while hurling the kunai toward the tiger. The kunai went through the tiger's mouth. As he touched down the ground, the tiger exploded in a shower of black ink. Naruto raised an eyebrow in curiosity. Boss? Konohamaru asked curiously. His eyes wore a loom of surprise and confusion. Naruto put the boy down and then took 2 steps forward. He then let loose of a small breath, seeing that was no more attack coming his way. He still didn't turn to Konohamaru as he spoke in a serious tone. It looks like I won't get to show you my awesome new jutsu today, he said as he created a shadow clone. Before Konohamaru could ask what was going on, the clone flashed behind him, placing both hands on his shoulders before disappearing. A pale teenager walked into the clearing along with an old man with a walking stick. Naruto frowned. According to the images showed, this was Danzo Shimura. A problematic situation that he had been told to avoid as he could avoid someone with a contagious disease was occurring. But running now was not going to solve anything. If this man was serious, he was just going to come back to him again. He stood still and placed both hands inside the pockets of his pants. Danzo stopped at a safe distance. Tsunade was probably going to show up any time soon. But he hadn't done anything wrong. Still, the blonde had truly changed. It was a good thing. The only nagging feeling was that he was still not a loyal shinobi. Tsunade was allowing him to do as he pleases, as the Hiruzen had done to his students. He would have never allowed the village's valued assets to roam free while their village was facing difficulties. It was either they came to serve Konoha or they stopped breathing. If they were not for Konoha, it meant they were against it. At this stage, Naruto could not be trusted. He was no different than Sasuke. Itachi should have just killed him instead of leaving him to live. He could have a problem now if the Uchiha ever came to know the truth. Still, Danzo had the ultimate faith that Itachi would never tell village secrets. Unlike these brats, Itachi knew what it meant to serve a village, and he had done his part. Of course, Danzo would not complain if he died any day now. It would only be a minus problem for him. And if the younger Uchiha was returned to the leaf, he could take him in and frame into the perfect weapon for the hidden leaf. I know that there was a point when you escaped from Jiraiya and he spent months looking for you, Danzo suddenly stated in an expressionless tone. Your refusal to return when called to return also raises questions about your loyalties to this village. Your point? I don't trust you. No one in this village trusts you. You will have to prove to us that we can trust your loyalties to this village. If we can ascertain of that, we won't have a problem. You are a valuable Jinchuriki, and we cannot simply allow someone of your value to be without loyalties to the village that gave birth to you. Naruto nearly rolled his eyes. He was not angry about this tone, this coldness he was receiving from the Warhawk. It was to be expected such words would come from him, at least as far as Jiraiya had said to him anyway. It was even laughable that this man wanted him to labor to a village that tormented his entire childhood. This village has done nothing for him but make him suffer. They should all just be happy that he was even willing to return here. Still, he would not say such words, not unless he wanted an Umbu to be tailing him everywhere he went, even outside of the village during missions. Of course, the village comes before everything. And I must prove myself. Whether Danzo understood that Naruto was being sarcastic was a matter up for debate. The Warhawk nodded. It makes things easier if you understand your position. If you need any help in controlling the Kyuubi's power, you can always come to me. That is a power that must not be held back. It must be used for Konoha's greatness and for its protection against its enemies. As you will realize, there are many of them. Danzo then paused for a moment. I came here because I want to talk to you about Sasuke. What of him? I know where he is. Orochimaru has become severely weakened now because his current host is dying. If we make a move now, Orochimaru won't be a problem, and we can retrieve the Uchiha. For you. Danzo did not respond to this. You don't have much time to think about this. Sai will become your teammate, and if you ever need to pass a message, pass it through him. I expect you to show your loyalties by doing something that you failed to do before, and bring back Sasuke here. Should you do that, you can expect to have my support against those who plot to make sure that you amount to nothing in this village. There are some people who would rather you not even be here. If they can get their hands on anything that could point at you being disloyal, there might be a campaign to drive you out. I can stop that. And with that, the War Hawk went away from him along with Sai. Naruto stood motionlessly with an expressionless mask on his face. Tsunade must have seen this. And yet she did nothing. He frowned just thinking that his life might become much more troubling in the days ahead. He didn't want to think that it was only despair that would awake him every day. He wanted to believe that there was hope. But Danzo's words, and Jiraiya's warning that things had changed, it made him feel uncomfortable and wishing that things were much clearer. He hoped this was not going to be another living hell. The following day. Movement, finding the right balance, and using just the right amount of chakra, these were key things needed for a shinobi to last longer in battle. Before, he would needlessly waste his stamina and chakra when using jutsu because he lacked finer control over it. It could not be helped since he had large reserves. Even as a fresh academy graduate, he had larger reserves than his Jonin sensei. But that still did no need to be an excuse to become careless. If he was going to surpass all, to become great, such flaws had to be removed in his fighting style. Still, to think he'd fight Sasuke on equal footing even though his fighting style left him open for attacks. His determination, sheer will to continue fighting regardless of the punishment he received had served him well, and it would continue to do so. It had also helped that he had stamina to outlast anyone who stand in a battle against him. He'd been stupid though. How could he not even realize that the clones always left memories of their experiences? How had Kakashi not stupidly pointed it out for him? The need for attention and to be loved had truly ruined him. He had never settled for deep thoughts. The back of his head had always been frightening. There was nothing but demons and the gate to abyss there. And so, he had avoided it at all costs. Naruto stopped what he was doing as he sensed a presence, and then glanced at a tree toward his right. Yo! Kakashi greeted him cheerfully. Kakashi-sensei, Naruto responded with a smile. You haven't aged at all. Meh, the Jonin shrugged carelessly. You have grown well into a finer man, if I must say. Ah! Naruto exclaimed. You don't swing that way, Kakashi-sensei, do you? Now that I think about it, I haven't seen you with any woman. Kakashi blinked once as he absorbed what Naruto was saying before chuckling. He chose not to respond to this. You seem to have grown a sense of humor. Naruto shrugged as he settled down on a meditative position. I've always had a sense of humor, he said in a subdued tone. He glanced at the Jonin for a second before closing his eyes. To think that this man had been trained by his father, and then tossed him out to a glorified chunin to help him fight against a prodigy. Couldn't he have done any better? Kakashi stared down at Naruto, his eyes smile a mere memory now. He didn't know what to say. It had been painstakingly pointed out to him that he was never a good teacher to his students. While he was not suited to teach someone like Sakura, he certainly didn't help her either. Her failures at the Chunin exams were just a testament to how much of a sensei he was to her. The fact that Sasuke felt he needed to get out of the village to get more power meant that he wasn't doing enough. And then there was his biggest failure, Naruto. There was nothing more to add on that. He had failed miserably. Jiraiya-sama says you enjoyed your trip. Well, what else aside from the happiness outside that would have made you resist the calls to return to the village? Naruto eyed the Jonin for a moment before closing his eyes once more. Perhaps the thought of more misery, he said. I had not gone out to be happy but to train. Admittedly, I learned many things about life as a shinobi, and found ways to enjoy my life. I won't say it was perhaps the happiest moment in my life, just maybe. I'm glad you had fun, Kakashi said. You haven't seen Sakura or any of your friends, is everything okay? I know I may not be the best person to ask, but it does strike me as curious. Your friends may be feeling like you no longer value them or their friendship. I know Sakura was not always the best of teammates. I mean, she never appreciated you, but always berated, yelled, even though she was the one who was useless. Kakashi's words were not kind but very harsh. They actually made Naruto raise a curious brow, despite never opening his eyes. Harsh, but true, the blonde said calmly. I can never forget them. They were friends, our friends. I won't say we studied together because I never did so, but we are comrades, and I do value their friendship, he said in an honest tone. I'm just still sorting out my issues. Besides, it has only been a day since I returned. I didn't know Sakura was looking for me. Really? Kakashi found that suspicious. Naruto smiled. You won't believe this, but sometimes ignorance is bliss. Besides, how would I know? I haven't met many people since my return. Kakashi nodded. There was sadness in Naruto's tone. He knew that by now, the blonde already knew that Minato-sensei was his father. It was something that Kakashi didn't want to deal with, especially given how Naruto is said to have reacted upon learning that he had been lied to through his whole life by the people he trusted. If you don't mind, you can join a couple of Jonin later on for some drinks. Time? Around 7 p.m. I will find you, Naruto said. Sometimes I thought you were a recluse, sensei. If you were not doing missions, you were reading your book, or staring at dead people. Kakashi chuckled lightly. It was just how Naruto said it. At some point in my life, I was like that. My life has been a bit tragic, that at some point, I cut off from everyone. Tragedy, huh? Naruto did not add anything. After a couple of moments, Kakashi simply disappeared in a puff of smoke without saying anything. Tsunade wore a serious look on her face. This was the kid whose actions convinced her to return to this village. It has been challenging since. She wondered how, in his old age, her sensei had been able to hold on to this position. She couldn't do this forever. In a couple of more years, they would have to start looking for a successor, before she was aging way too quickly. Her hair was surely going to lose its color soon enough if she was not relieved of her stressful moments. Naruto, or at least his situation, compounded to her everyday stay. There had not been a day he didn't come to mind, or a meeting when she wasn't pressed about his whereabouts. It was safe to say that people were truly afraid that he might turn against them. She had warned them against any movements. When it had become known that he knew about his parents, someone had suggested he be brought back immediately. It would only tarnish the village's name if the son of its greatest hero ends up abandoning it because of the cruel treatment dished out to him. Right there and then, Tsunade and loudly said it, perhaps even rashly, that it was not like they would not deserve anything that would fall on them. She had spat and scoffed at all the clans to their failure to protect Naruto, and that none of them, and even bothered to take him in when they knew that Minato was his father. They had simply abandoned him because they didn't want to be associated with the Kyuubi. Sighing deeply, Tsunade leaned back to her chair and her mask loosened slightly. She wanted to ask him how he was doing. She wanted to know why he was choosing to stay in his house rather than going out to meet with friends. But this was a non-personal issue. I called you here because I have signed you back in for active duty. Of course, you're still ranked a genin. How that changes will be completely up to you. And naturally, your ranking also determines the kind of mission one gets, Tsunade stated. In terms of strength, there was no denying that Naruto had proved himself as being worthy of wearing the vest, but his mental capacity was one thing to consider. He had failed to follow orders and was prone to acting on his own. That was a red flag for Chunin, who were at times chosen to lead a team of genin outside the village for a mission. Please don't make me do D-rank missions, Naruto begged the Hokage. No, those damn chores are not missions. Even when the Sandaime had tried many times to explain their economic importance, I'd always thought it was just complete bull being fed to genin to make them feel important while doing someone's laundry. Tsunade smiled. At least some things never changed. You are a genin, you can't make any demands. I'm grown. I have needs and wants. Chores cannot cover the amount of pay I require to sustain my living, Naruto stated firmly. That aside, he had a house that needed to be looked after, not to mention his other activities were rather expensive. Wait until the next Chunin exams, and you can raise your ranking, if you succeed or manage to impress, Tsunade said indifferently. There is a mission that you will join. It is going to be in 2 days. Prepare yourself to depart, and equipment. You may be gone for about 2 weeks. And I am sorry I have to send you out so soon after returning. Naruto shook his head. I need to be busy, and there is no better service to one's village than doing risky missions, the blonde said. When you return, you will rejoin Team 7. And with a new member who will join you to make the numbers. I believe you have already him earlier with Danzo, Tsunade said with narrowed eyes. Naruto adopted a thoughtful look before nodding. Anything else I should know? He is there to spy on you, your new teammate, Tsunade said with a slight wave of her right hand. Details about your mission will be given when you leave. You will be summoned when it is time. For now, speak to your friends, and put on a smile. Naruto nodded. As you wish, Bachan. You are insulting me by calling me that when even bowing your head respectfully, Tsunade said with a sharp glare. Naruto grinned and said, Enjoy the rest of your day, Bachan, he said and then turned around to leave through the door. The moment he turned away from Tsunade, his mask slipped, replaced by an expressionless mask. As he walked through the passages, he came across a very familiar face, Niji. The Hyuga was as stoic as he could remember, but he had truly grown. Hello, my vanquished foe, Naruto wanted to say, just to press the Hyuga's buttons, but he decided against it. Niji. Naruto, Niji responded with a nod before walking past the blonde. He was never friends with the Hyuga. He was not part of the Konoha 9. Besides, the Hyuga had never been a likable person with his character. Niji had expected something childish from Naruto. He had already known that the blonde was back in the village. He was hardly a silent person, but his presence has always been something that was felt throughout the village. Still, this time it was not by his doing. As far as the Hyuga clan was concerned, the blonde wasn't integrating himself with anyone but just minding his own business. Well, things change. People change. Situations change. He thought such a notion was impossible, but it was not. Partially thanks to the very same Naruto, in his eyes, cursed to live with an unbearable burden. When he walked into the Hokage's office, he greeted the woman respectfully, and then waited for her to speak. I'm going to send you out on a mission to the Earth Country. It is a very important mission, and you will be meeting someone from Iwagakure. She is going to give you some valuable information. The danger is that you might get ambushed or come across IWA shinobi. Nothing must happen to her in your watch, and you must get that information and return it. It mustn't get into the wrong hands. And if you come across IWA shinobi, fight when forced. If it is possible, avoid it, Tsunade said in a hardened tone. Your partner will be with Naruto. You will have Umbu following you in the shadows only within the Fire Country. But once you leave, you will be on your own. Niji had questions about Naruto's abilities, but he would not question the Hokage's decision. When do we depart? 2 days, Tsunade said. You will be in charge as the higher-ranked shinobi. Naruto won't know about the Umbu, and they are not going to interfere in your mission unless it becomes clear that you won't save the scroll you will receive. Was Naruto told this? Tsunade shook her head. He doesn't need to know. I didn't want to tell you either, but your team captain. Naruto will likely out before you even notice them, however. If anything else must happen, I will trust your judgment, but the scroll must be secure, if you get it. This was dangerous. The Umbu were not going to be there to spy on them but to take care of loose ends that the Hokage didn't want them to do. Niji was not going to ask. This was how things worked in this world. He just had to do his part. Hi, Hokage-sama. Sakura was a little nervous coming to this place. She had been told by Tsunade that Naruto was living in this house. Still, she hadn't had the guts to go alone, just thinking about the way he left and the fact that she was warned that Naruto was no longer the same. But what truly made her nervous about seeing him was the fact that she hadn't been a good teammate to him. Even when he had done well, she had never congratulated him. She smiled miserably at the thought of when Sasuke had nearly bit her head off for saying Naruto didn't know anything because he didn't have parents. They were the same. Admittedly, the two had been much closer to each other than her. Did you drag me here just to stand here? Ino asked with impatience. Sakura had dragged her from the flower shop because she needed some emotional support. Ino would not have come here, but she was interested in seeing Naruto. Asuma-sensei had said he only saw him from a distance, but he had truly grown. Sakura glared at Ino for disturbing her thoughts, but before she could say anything in response, the door slowly opened, in a creeping manner. Naruto stepped out, wearing dirty clothes, his face a little black with something like grease. He was barefooted. When he smiled, something seemed to light up. "I'd been waiting for you to finally knock, but I grew impatient," Naruto said in a casual tone. "Sakura, Ino, it is pleasant to see you too." Ino blinked. This was Naruto? Something was wrong in this picture. Since when did Naruto speak like a normal person? She didn't mind him being dirty, he was obviously busy with fixing something. "At least something's changed," she said, eyeing him from head to toe. "Are you not going to welcome us into your house?" Naruto smiled. "Why do you say it like that, Ino? This is indeed my house." "Last time I checked, you were living in an apartment in a crappy environment," she said, folding her hands across her chest. "But of course, that was some years ago." "Indeed, you'll forgive my appearance. I'm busy trying to fix my drainage system and some things," Naruto said of his appearance. He then stepped out the way, to allow the ladies to step into the house. The passages were silent. But unlike Naruto, they were clean. The house was nice. The air felt fresh. He led them toward the kitchen, saying he couldn't put them in the sitting room because he was busy working. It was then that Ino and Sakura noticed something: portraits of the Yondaime Hokage and his wife. "Since when do you fix stuff?" Sakura asked, trying to ease into the conversation before asking what bothered her. "I'm too broke to buy a new fridge. This looks burst, though I don't even know what I was doing," Naruto answered, staring at the fridge. "Well, at least I managed to fix the drainage system," he added with a smile. "I'm surprised you came to visit." "We are teammates," Sakura said. "And I'd honestly miss you sometimes when things are not around. You realize you value them," she added in a sad tone. "It is such a pity that it takes loss for us to see value," Naruto answered, staring at Sakura. "But you look different, sound different though." Her chest remained the same. "You just made a silent comment about my chest, didn't you?" Naruto smiled, both hands held up. "I wouldn't want to piss you off like that. I heard you learned your trade from the old hag," he said before he could add. Ino spoke. "If you're not going to ask, I will," the blonde cut in a serious tone. "Why are the pictures of the Yondaime Hokage in this house?" "I bought them. He is my hero. It isn't weird, is it?" Ino snorted. "You don't have money to fix the fridge, but you have money to buy portraits, and those look like they have been there for a long time. You don't have money to buy kunai but have money to get your hair done. Priorities. My hair is important. There are people who see me every day. And we like what we see." Ino stared. Did Naruto just say that in a sly tone, a sweet smile that would make a girl blush? The Naruto she knew? The loudmouth idiot who could never get his eyes off Sakura? Blonde hair, blue eyes. If you were not a known orphan, an idiot, and someone loathed by almost everyone in the village, I'd suspect you were related to him. But there is just no way someone related to the past Hokage, especially the Yondaime who is loved by all, could have been allowed to live and be stupid in the way you were, Ino said in a flat tone. Was I that stupid? Of course you were. You probably couldn't even spell stupid back then. Sakura just stared expressionlessly at Naruto. He noticed it but ignored it. Kakashi smiled seeing Naruto walk into the bar with casual clothing and rather watchful eyes. He had thought perhaps the blonde would not make it. And the only reason he had invited him was because Jiraiya had said that he was no longer a child and did many adult activities. Well, the shinobi world did have a saying: once you become a shinobi, you become an adult. Naruto was, however, an adult in the sense of the word. He raised his hand, waving it for the blonde to see. Upon arrival, Naruto raised an eyebrow. He was looking at three men, in a bar. While Naruto had gone to bars with Jiraiya, he had never made it a permanent fixture, and they all went their different ways when night had come. He sighed. Well, there were those nights. Besides, he didn't feel like going crazy. Tomorrow morning, he had to see his friends as teammate had a mission during the afternoon. Niji really didn't know how this mission was going to end. He could only hope that things wouldn't be too hard. It was an S-rank mission and they just had to meet someone and collect a scroll, but there was a possibility of coming across dangerous opponents along the way, hence the rank. He'd never led an S-rank mission before, let alone do one from the onset. Even when missions ended up being S-rank, there was always those green beasts to do most of the damage. Those two never tire, but the same could be said about Naruto. The blonde was carrying a small bag, waiting for him at the gates. Niji stopped, and stared. The blonde stared back. He was finding it difficult to deal with this Naruto. The old one was much easier to deal with than this one. After a moment, he realized the blonde was amused about something. Was he reading his thoughts? Niji shook his head. That was impossible. Naruto, Neji started in a slow tone. I just want to remind you that this is an important mission and I am leading this team. You will be following my lead as the Jonin, and you a Genin. Naruto shrugged. Whatever you say, Neji, he said. But as long as you are not leading me to death, I will follow you. However, if you are leading me where I don't want to go, you go alone, you'll find me rooted to the same spot. Neji frowned. But he didn't want to get into an argument with the blonde. It wasn't like he was an idiot who would willingly walk into a trap. He was far smarter than the blonde, even though he did end up losing their last match. But he'd only lost because of arrogance, and he had underestimated the blonde. After all, he had dismissed his chances of winning the moment it was announced they would fight in the first match of the final rounds. Let's just go, Neji said, turning away from Naruto. Without delay, he followed. We need to make a stop somewhere. There are certain things that I must collect, Naruto suddenly said as they went through the trees, hopping up and down from tree to tree. Neji glanced at him once more. We have a mission, and if your collection has nothing to do with the mission, we can do as when we return. It cannot happen. I'm not sure if I will find it when I return, Naruto said in a firm tone. Would you rather I send a clone to do it? I imagine that may raise some suspicions of my conduct during the mission. For full transparency, it would be best if we go together. Neji resisted the urge to frown. From the tone Naruto was using, he knew the blonde was not going to be an easy person to deal with. He nevertheless wasn't being unreasonable. They were surely not going to go out of their way to go to this place Naruto wanted them to stop by. If so, he would have said they changed directions. What are we going to take? Naruto smiled. You'll see. They arrived at what appeared to be a shrine. It looked old, like it has been around for many years. Neji was wary about getting inside. This was still by the outskirts of the leaf, and yet he didn't know anything about it. That is when the Hyuga clan has taken it upon itself to map the outskirts of the village, just in case there was an attack. What is this place? Neji asked, with his Byakugan activated. There was even an underground place that looked secure. A shrine belonging to the Uzumaki clan. As you are from the Hyuga clan, I doubt you are ignorant about my clan, the blonde said as he stepped in. I only found about it going through some of the things my mother left behind. He then stopped before walking inside and put on a blank look, facing Neji. You know about what is inside of me, don't you? As we are doing this mission, the old hag must have told you, and you must have seen my second source of chakra in our fight at the Chunin exams. The air felt intense, like there was a wrong answer. Neji felt anxious, but he didn't show it in his face. I know. Naruto then suddenly smiled. You Hyugas are not fun. I would have expected that you'd have removed the stick up your ass, but no. In any case, this is a temple with some masks. I want to collect all of them. These are perhaps the only valuable possession I have of my clan since everything was completely destroyed. You don't sound particularly happy about that, Neji said, as they stepped into the temple. There were different masks, with different faces. They were strange. Naruto didn't immediately respond as he took a sealing scroll and started sealing everything. He did what he was doing silently before he motioned they move ahead into their mission. As they silently hopped through the trees, he finally responded. I'm just a little sad about the fact that masks are the only thing I have left of my clan. When tragedy strikes, it does not pick only those who are nasty. The blonde then glanced at the Hyuga for a moment before looking ahead. Sorry I took us off schedule. This was really important to me. Neji found himself nodding. I understand, he said. The rest of the journey was peacefully silent, but Neji had questions. With each jump, he became curious about Naruto, at least the Naruto he was dealing with. He was completely different from the blonde he once knew. This was a different person. And it was a curious thing. He wanted to know more about what he was thinking, but he could not ask just like that. They were not friends. They were just in the same group that participated in the Chunin exams, representing Konoha. Along the way, he realized, Naruto was much more aware of their surroundings. Not only that, his alertness and preparedness to step in when called made him feel a bit reassured that he was at least dealing with someone who was disciplined. The old would not have halted the moment he said halt. He would not have been so observant to take note of shinobi lying in wait, fighting over something. They had quietly went past them, not wanting to be drawn into troubles they did not want, and their mission was slightly a covert operation. When night came, they had already covered some distance but had not yet crossed the borders of the Fire Country. Neji had deemed it appropriate to get as some rest as they could. They would have crossed the border before dawn, but they were still on schedule. And it was safe to rest in their own country than in the earth or grass. There was no telling what would happen. Perhaps the logical decision would have been for him to rest first, and allow the blonde to take the long watch given that he was less tired than him. But Niji wanted to deal with the issue of their security first by scanning their entire surrounding first before allowing Naruto to keep watch. And so, he allowed Naruto to take rest while he scanned the area. The target was simply sitting beside a fire with an expressionless look on his face. His teammate was sleeping inside a tent. There had been no movement there, so it was safe to say he was dead asleep. But with shinobi, you could never know. One moment he was snoring and the next, he was wide awake, holding a kunai to your throat. The Hyuga will notice us the moment we get close. We can't go head on. If we get noticed, we awakes his teammate, and that will become a problem. There were 6 of them, ready for action, and their opponents were just 2. They had more means of attack than just one. A sneak attack on someone who could gain an entire field of view with his damned eyes was near impossible. The moment the Hyuga senses something or hears a stick snapping, he was going to stay still and activate his Byakugan. If that happened, they would all be exposed and their surprise attack gone into smokes. Aerial attack then, another suggested. Yes, we drop something big on them while 2 jump on the Hyuga. There has to be the biggest threat. But gaining either will still be considered a success. But the Hyuga can still recognize that. How about we throw one at them, lightning from above? The Hyuga looks up, and tries to avoid it. We pounce while he is trying to move. We then could attack all at once as his teammate will be alerted of the danger. Niji's senses suddenly picked when he felt something shift in the air. He knew there was something coming. He had already been warned that there might be attacks along the way. But he hadn't thought that such attacks would find them while they were still within their own country. He quickly stood up and activated the Byakugan. His vision immediately went up, watching the objects falling down. He frowned. There were 6 opponents. There was no movement from the tent. Naruto appeared to be peacefully sleeping. He wanted to rush toward the blonde, but those things falling on him were unmistakably explosives. He jumped away from where he stood, stopped, further distancing himself from Naruto. Probably what the opponents wanted. But there was no other choice. He just hoped that Naruto would handle things well. Why wasn't he already up anyway? Boom! A round of explosions occurred the moment Niji touched down. He didn't get a chance to look at what had happened on Naruto's side. The blonde had too been hit by the explosions. He was surrounded by 4 shinobi. Was he the biggest threat, or did they just think that Naruto was easier because he was sleeping? Niji took a stance and sized up his opponents. They were not that strong. Judging from their chakra levels, they were probably high chunin. Not much of a problem, but he was not going to underestimate them. When one lunged at him, another dashed in behind. Niji's hands glowed with chakra, and he took a single step forward. He sized up the shinobi rushing towards him and the one behind. He needed to be careful and not waste movements. There was no telling what awaited him ahead. They couldn't afford to waste chakra here. He leaned down slightly, ducking under stretched out right hand that attempted to grip him on his face. As he did so, he drove his right hand forward, and his index finger hit the shinobi at a pressure point on his chest. He quickly danced around, flashing his feet as he twisted around. He leaned to the left trying to avoid a kunai. He barely avoided it as it grazed through his ear. What had bothered him were the movements of the other 2, who simultaneously jumped toward him. Kaiten! Naruto's eyes flashed open as the danger senses kicked him wide awake. He could feel the chakra signatures moving in close to him. He could not see what was happening. He shouldn't have allowed Niji to take the first watch. But the Hyuga insisted, saying he could do it. His first watch was going to be shorter anyway. He didn't get up but stayed down. Boom! An explosive tag hit his tent, engulfing it in a cloud of crimson flames. It was resounding enough to completely destroy the tent. Within a second of going off, the flames started twisting, controllably. They then became a burning tornado. Ah, shit! The shinobi cursed, seeing the flames twisting furiously toward him. It was not expected, and the speed of the flames was faster than what he could handle. Within a second, the flames engulfed him. He cried, feeling the burn. The intensity of the flames had increased. His entire body was being burnt. He could not even cry as his clothes started burning. His pained cry only increased in volume, causing the sleeping birds to awake and flee. His shrieks lasted for a full minute, and there was just nothing that overpowered it. Well, that was unpleasant. Men is a cruel thing, but if you're human, you really don't want to hear such a pained cry, do you? The shinobi flinched, upon hearing the sudden voice from behind. Wasn't the blonde in the tornado? How had he even moved fast enough without him seeing or even getting behind him? And why the hell did he sound sincere about his words? When he twisted around, while trying to jump away from the blonde, his flailing right hand was caught, and he was yanked forcefully back. He yelped silently by the force behind the yank. It was a sudden pull that made him feel like someone was trying to tear off his hand from his shoulder. Naruto proceeded to pound him on his chest with a powerful punch. The air inside his lungs escaped in the blink of an eye. He felt his energy leave body weak. Was it even possible to even feel like that with just one punch? He thought as he fell down on his knees. A brutal knee hit his face, sending him crashing toward a tree with his back. He didn't make a pained cry, but gritted his teeth as small amounts of blood started to flow out slowly. How had this gone wrong? Their opponents were not supposed to be this strong. Arg! A foot crashed into his throat, cutting his airflow. He struggled to break free, hands hit hard on the leg. But he was being pressed against the tree's trunk. Naruto, Neji called out. We need them alive. Naruto turned to face the Hyuga without saying anything. He didn't have any plans to keep at it, he was simply making sure the man did not move. He knew that Konoha had some careful mind readers and people capable of extracting information. After a moment, he allowed the man to breathe, and then took a step back, but he then brutally slammed his right foot on the man's forehead. There was so much strength that he was knocked out before he even hit the tree's trunk. Neji merely shrugged indifferently at Naruto's actions. There was the right amount of force to keep the man knocked out for a while. Unlike him, the blonde didn't have his dijutsu to hit specific chakra points. That was just an old-fashioned method, and it worked. When the blonde suddenly settled down in a meditative posture, he spoke again. We can't stay here for too long, he said. Naruto nodded. I know, and I also know that your vision covers a certain range. I need to be able to see beyond your view to see where we stand in terms of potential obstructions, the blonde said with his eyes closed. Neji just stared, just wondering what the blonde was doing. He realized he was gathering energy around him. It was something else. The amount of chakra and its potency, it was powerful. It was unlike anything he had ever seen before. After a couple of moments, the blonde opened his eyes, which were sharper, and placed both hands on the ground. Once more he closed his eyes. Looks like we are safe, but I sense 4 shinobi watching us. They are not hostile. Do you know anything about it? He asked without looking at the Hyuga. Neji waited until Naruto finished what he was doing and then responded. He answered. Clean up duties. We can leave this for them and continue with our mission. We can rest once we have crossed the borders. A town would make a perfect hiding place, but we need to put on a henge, Naruto said. I know a town not far from here, but we'd still have to travel some distance. How is that not far if we have to travel a distance? Naruto smiled. I mean, for me it is fine. But you haven't had much rest. Neji frowned. I can carry you if you don't mind. Neji stared for a moment. Your suggestion is okay. At this rate, we will arrive far sooner than planned. Our source is supposed to meet us at a specific place at an appointed time. It would be best if we could scout the area before meeting her. Naruto nodded. As you say, Captain, I guess I am leading the way, he added. As they hopped on the trees, Neji spoke. You didn't tell me you were a sensory type, he said, a little surprised about the fact. I'm not, well, at least I am when I am using natural energy. It is not an ability that is forever activated. Only when I am in this mode can I keep it. And it isn't like the Byakugan, which I can just activate and deactivate. I need to be gather natural first and balance it within. Obviously I cannot keep it forever. When I burn the chakra, I will eventually lose the mode. But I can keep it for now, since I assume you keeping your Byakugan also burns a little more of your chakra. How accurate is it? You're smart enough. By that, Neji realized Naruto meant what had happened earlier. The following day. Slowly, Neji's eyes opened into the unfamiliar scene. He had arrived early morning, after an all-night travel with a stamina freak. Even as they ran, tearing through their energy reserves, Naruto had displayed few signs of weariness. It had been dangerous to arrive as tired as he was. What if someone had attacked them upon their arrival? He wouldn't have been able to fight at his best. He was being careless. Shaking his head, Neji breathed in and then stood. He'd slept leaning against the wall, with his bag safely tucked in between his legs. It was already daylight, and there was no sign of Naruto in the room. He wanted to activate his Byakugan but sensed the chakra signature above and then decided to follow it. He found the blonde lying on the rooftop, reading. He blinked. Strange things have happened. As far as he was concerned, Naruto had a well-documented enmity with books. He was after all the dead last of his academy class, not for the lack of effort but simply because he didn't know anything. Well, something's changed. You don't have to look at me as if you saw a ghost, Naruto said casually before flipping a page. Aside from hearing other people talk, there is no other way of gaining knowledge aside from reading. Knowledge broadens your understanding of things. I lacked that understanding when younger. And then some, Niji wanted to add, but he stopped himself from doing so, and just sat beside the blonde. How do you know this town? During my travels, I came here. I hardly stayed in one place but made it a point to know the shinobi world, Naruto said. He glanced at Niji for a moment. It shouldn't be difficult talking to Niji. He was after all different from the other Hyugas. His contempt for him hadn't been for the Kyuubi but for the fact that was an idiot, inferior to him. That hadn't ended well for him, but still. I understand we don't question missions, but what do you think is happening here? Who are those shinobi? Niji shook his head. Kumogakure had banned, but they did not fight like shinobi from Kumo. Such things occur when another village wants to sow divisions. They could have been from any village. But we may likely never find out, Naruto added in quiet tone. But he could ask Jiraiya, or maybe get in contact with someone who knows things. Along the way, he had learned a couple of things about making connections. It did help that he was traveling with Jiraiya. Possibly, but as things stand, we might know eventually, Niji said. This isn't a normal mission after all. Shinobi were merely tools. Armed weapons to be used to achieve the objectives of their villages. They were walking into this without any details. The presence of the Umbu meant another thing. They were not there to watch over them but to do other things. It was likely that the person they were going to meet was being hunted down by people from Iwagakure. If that was the case, they might encounter shinobi from the stone and they could prove to be problematic. I honestly thought you would not be suited for this kind of mission when I was told its importance and the dangers posed. Obviously, judging from my past attitude, Naruto said without taking offense. Things change, so have you, apparently. You making friends in the Hyuga clan? Friends? They now had a higher opinion of him, and he was allowed to learn things that were left for the main family. Things had changed for the best since the Chunin exams. While I cannot make for my attitude towards Hinata-sama, the lack of knowledge on what happened to my father, and the idea of being tied by a seal hadn't made me happy. Lies. Half-truths. Naruto now knew what actually happened some time ago. It was pitiful that the Sandaime allowed the village to be bullied by Kumogakure. The village had sent someone to try to kidnap a Hyuga, and when it failed, it threatened war. The Cloud was surely a power-hungry nation that will stop at nothing to get what it wants. Even his mother had nearly been kidnapped. Yet, Konoha did nothing, and that was because the Sandaime had become weary of the wars. But wars defined the shinobi world. A shinobi does not listen to words but to power. Ignorance at times is not bliss, it leaves you with other ideas of why things are like that way, Naruto said in a quiet tone. How do we scout the area? I'll do it, Niji said. We don't know who we are meeting. We just have to be at the meeting place in the arranged time. Niji paused and then shook his head. It would be best if we do it together. There are things that I cannot see, that you can sense, and things that you can sense that I can see. It would be best to get the whole picture. Naruto nodded. The following day. This looks like a trap, doesn't it? They were standing atop of a tree branch, not far away from the stone. This was the anointed location. They had already scouted it, and there were no traps that were laid for them. But their contact wasn't anywhere to be seen. Not to mention, they didn't know her. Whoever was going to show up here would be their contact and give them the scroll before they could depart back home. Their contact wasn't showing up. They'd been here since morning, and it was already hours, and there was nothing. Or maybe something happened to our contact, Niji responded, scanning the area with his Byakugan. But why do you say that? I'm sensing a single chakra signature coming here, but it is very powerful. From what I understand, we are meeting someone who is a spy, but this person feels too strong to be a spy. In any case, there are also multiple chakra signatures following this person, and they are in high speed. Niji frowned. Could it be that she was late because they were being chased? Or had something bad happened? They could not afford to leave this location. They just had to sit here and wait to see what would happen. Where? Naruto pointed and Niji focused on the area. He frowned deeply. He couldn't see anything yet. His range of vision was really not that great. We don't want to be dragged into a fight with IWA shinobi in their own country. The relationship between the two villages has never been that great. We have to be ready to flee if anything comes. Do you have anything in your arsenal we can use to escape even if surrounded? Yes, I can summon a toad and we can leap away from this place, Naruto said. You think things will come to that point? We have to be prepared for anything. They waited in silence for about 20 minutes before someone finally arrived. It was a Kunoichi. But Naruto frowned when seeing her. The good thing about working with Jiraiya was that you learned a lot of things and the important people in all other hidden villages. He knew this person, and she was definitely not the kind of person they were meeting. Or maybe he was wrong. Kuratsuchi grinned, looking at the two Konoha shinobi. You'll have to forgive me for coming in late, but there was a bit of a situation, and I believe this is what you want, she said, taking out a scroll. Niji deactivated his Byakugan but did not say anything. He trusted Naruto to have his back. Are you going to hand it over? Sorry, Kuratsuchi said before throwing the scroll to Niji. The Hyuga caught it and was ready to leave, but Kuratsuchi stopped him. Open it. I'm afraid that is not according to our orders. We were simply told to collect the scroll. Obedient shinobi, aren't you curious, even a little? No, Niji said before quickly activating his Byakugan. He turned his eyes to the scroll to scan it. His eyes widened slightly before he threw it up into the air. Boom! It exploded into a powerful explosion that tore through the area, blasting air waves all around. There was a huge cloud of intense flames in the air. Niji didn't focus on the flames but on the handful of shinobi who suddenly flashed into the trees, surrounding them. He turned to Naruto, only to find the blonde doing hand seals. He breathed out in relief, thanking him for being quick on his feet. Kuchios no Jutsu. In a huge cloud of smoke, the Toad Chief appeared, waving his huge sword around. Why have you summoned me, brat? Naruto and Niji were already atop of the Toad's head. We need that little of escape jutsu to escape out of a tricky situation. You know, unlike Jiraiya, I don't summon to escape from you angry women. The Toad Chief looked around. He could see that they were surrounded. It was IWA shinobi. Were there problems between the two villages again? The last one had ended because IWA feared losing more shinobi to Minato. Without even responding, he did a quick huge jump into the air, leaving the IWA shinobi grounded. As they jumped, Naruto dropped a couple of smoke bombs to the ground. When the smoke cleared, Kuratsuchi was surrounded by the many shinobi. She had a huge frown on her lips. They were escaping. Chasing them was pointless even. At least now they knew that Konoha was going to become trouble. And the fact that those two escaped without even trying to fight meant that they were afraid of igniting war flames with the hidden stone. Mission accomplished, Kuratsuchi said. Let's go, she said. Well, half accomplished since we didn't get the scroll, but it doesn't matter since we found the crucial link. Thank you, sir. Naruto saluted the Toad Chief. You owe me for disturbing my time. I'll make it up, Naruto said as the giant toad disappeared in a puff of smoke. They were at a safe zone and the IWA people were not chasing after them, so they could take a leisurely pace going back home. Still, to think that he would fail his first mission like this. Things had certainly not gone according to plan, and that was going to reflect on his record. Well, there was nothing they could have done about the situation. This is just going to reignite the tensions between the Leaf and Iwagakure, Niji stated in stern tone. We may have our names in Iwa's bingo books. Nothing that can be avoided. Simply because you exist, and you will end up in someone's book, Naruto stated. From what I understand, IWA and Kumo have been feuding after the latter attempted to steal the former's Jinchuriki. Konoha has been keeping a low profile, Niji said. I thought the village was not going to involve itself, but I was wrong. Things are just going to be dangerous going forward. 2 days later. Tsunade faced both Niji and Naruto with an expressionless mask. Neither looked particularly pleased about their mission. But frankly, missions were not done to make them happy. Being a shinobi meant doing a mission whether you liked it or not. Whether you thought it was right or wrong. If Naruto was going to grow, he needed to be put in a position where he would do things that he disagreed with. Everyone served her, and they followed her orders. She was the Hokage, and all shinobi were her subordinates. Insubordination of a shinobi was a high crime. Did you get it? Niji shook his head. He'd realized the Umbu had stopped tailing them the moment he went past the borders of the Earth Country. No, we met someone else who was going to ambush us, that's Skiki's granddaughter, but we did not fight her. I'll provide a detailed report and submit it before the day ends. But ultimately, we did not achieve the desired result. You'll get your pay once the report comes. You can all report later on, Tsunade said as she leaned back to her chair. How was his behavior? Controlled and worthy of Jonin, Niji said. Further details will be on my report. You know I am right here, Naruto said. Tsunade faced him with a stern look. The reason I sent you out on this mission was because I needed to see if you were ready. Jiraiya did say you'd grown, but I needed to see this. You did not exactly fail in your mission. You succeeded in doing what was expected. I never expected you to get the scroll, but it was already in someone's possession. The Umbu collected it, and you were just a diversion. A month ago, one of our Umbu was sent to IWA to gather information regarding its usage of the Akatsuki, and its plans regarding the battles with Kumo. We lost contact with our Umbu 2 weeks ago, but she contacted us again, saying she was being watched and someone had blown her cover. We couldn't take her out, so she gave her information to someone else. When she tried to flee the village, I assume Akatsuki attacked her. But the information she had was no longer in her possession. Of course, this does reveal our interest to IWA, but it is within tolerance, and we expect them to say something soon. It goes without saying that this is classified information. The Godame said. Niji, you may leave. Naruto, stay behind. I want to talk to you. Hi, Niji said before leaving the office. Previously, you had the tendency to go overboard and do what was not wanted because you did not listen to orders. You are indeed a genin, but you need to follow orders. When I tell you do this, you do it without question or second guessing me. If you are ordered to dispose of someone, even if you think they did nothing wrong, you will do it, because I instructed you. Do you understand what I am saying, Naruto? Hi. Good. Jiraiya tells me that you have developed your skills. I am going to use those skills. You will work with Kakashi in some missions in the days to come. But normal missions will be carried out with Team 7. You will even be sent to do solo missions. These will be much more dangerous than what you faced on this one, and I expect you to succeed. The Slug Princess then released a long breath. On a personal note, if you ever feel that you are tired, or have had enough, please come talk to me, Naruto. If you need anything, talk to me, I will help where I can. I know this village has failed you. I know people have lied to you. I know my sensei lied to you. I want you to know that you can trust me. And I don't give a fuck about what anyone says in this village about you. You are my shinobi, and no one is going to make this place hell for you. Now tell me, do you want me to publicly announce that Minato was your father? I'm not going to say anything about the Kyuubi. Most people in your generation don't know about this, but the older generation know about it. Why do you want to do that? Someone is going to leak it soon enough. I don't think it will gain any sympathy to you, but I want them to know that what they hated was the son of the very man they worship. Naruto shook his head. Let it leak, I don't want to become known as Minato's son. Besides, I have already accepted that I am Naruto Uzumaki, or contemptuously known as the Kyuubi brat. It may seem a bit sad, but I am a host of the Kyuubi, and I cannot escape from that. I just have to embrace it. It doesn't make me a killer, it makes me one who holds an object of the people's contempt. My mother said this, you can defeat hate by love. But I really don't think I have enough love in me. Tsunade accepted this with sad look. Do you still want to be Hokage? I don't know, I just want to do my best, while trying to find myself. The truth was, sometimes he thought he wanted to become someone so powerful and likable that these people would even come to beg him to lead them, but he would refuse. He would tell them they did not deserve him. He could not lead them, for they, even when knowing that he was just a child, they taunted him, hated him, called him names, refused to sell to him, overcharged him, and worst of all, told their children to stay away from him, even in his presence. And then after, he would walk away from Konoha. Such would not give him joy, but it would teach them a lesson. You reap what you sow. If I didn't know any better, I'd say you were stalking me. If I was, I'd be thinking about getting a guard whenever necessary, since Jiraiya leaves me to my devices whenever he can. Of course, those moments have provided him with time and the space to conduct his business. Activities would otherwise not be able to conduct with Jiraiya hovering around him. But the feeling that he was being stalked was unpleasant. Could he even take a piss without thinking that was watching to see if it was yellow of just clear? I know he comes, shows you something and then departs for his next mission, but you never stay in one place. Rather, you move around from town to town. You are stalking me, I'm worried at this point. You are a wanted criminal. He glanced at the man curiously and then smiled. Wasn't it something else that, despite this being a criminal, he had no desire to flee? Trying to take him on? No, that was impossible for him. He didn't have enough strength. With a simple case, he could be a world of illusions that was apparently unbreakable, even to a Jinchuriki. It is funny that despite being a man wanted for a crime so cruel, I should be sickened just by the sight of you, but I'm not. Truly, but then again, his morals were becoming questionable in these days. It was not to say he was like that snake, or Orochimaru, or any evil man. He was looking at things differently. After all, even the likes of Kakashi had taught him that not everything was as it looked. A shinobi truly had no right to judge another. They were all murderers. The only difference was the reason and the body count. Despite your status, you don't seem to be that of a bad person. Your voice gives nothing. Your expression is a mask of indifference, and your eyes reflect nothing but emptiness. But I sense no evil intentions, and that is the answer to the question why I am not wary around you. And no, Jiraiya doesn't know. You are truly different from the boy who left Konoha or perhaps before that incident with Sasuke. But the growth is good. Even a child stops crawling at some point and start learning to walk. You cannot be blind forever, unless it is natural. He paused, looking around for a moment. He knew there was no one watching, but this was a world full of surprises and shocks. If someone from Konoha actually ever saw me talking to you, I would get accused of treason. As you already know, the hidden leaf doesn't favor me that much. I would rather not intentionally make things worse, but admittedly, I think I would be much happier if they decided I shouldn't return. There is, however, no chance of that happening as long as Tsunade remains Hokage. I will return to the leaf no matter the circumstance. Of course, he did think that they would rather shackle him than watch him leave the village. Power was everything in the shinobi world, and he had a bijou inside of him. No village would willingly allow a Jinchuriki to walk away. It would only be giving power to another village. You are willing to throw away your happiness for your village? Don't get me wrong, I'm not throwing away my happiness. I don't have happiness. Konoha drained that from me from the day I was born. I am trying to find it again. Whether I give myself to the village or not does not matter. We are all just shinobi. If I don't do it, someone else will. That is how this system works. But enough of that, why are you here? What do you want from me? You are now ready to listen, I will talk to you. As Naruto flashed in front of a clone, his right arm snaked toward its face, grabbing it into an iron grip. He picked it up slightly, and then slammed it against the ground with so much brutal force that it got buried before disappearing in a puff of smoke. His eyes snapped up, as he tried to straighten himself up when he sensed more movement in front of him. Once he was up straight, Naruto folded his hands across his chest, burying his face behind the defensive stance. A second later, a right foot slammed into his defense, sending him rocketing backward like a bullet. He didn't even wince when his body crashed into a tree, shattering through its trunk. Sensing more movement, he grabbed the falling tree by its trunk whilst still airborne. A clone was lunging ahead of him. He touched down, on both feet, knees bent slightly for better balance before swinging the full tree towards the clone. Katon, Great Fire Ball! The clone released a huge ball of flames from its mouth. The heat was intense, burning through the atmosphere as quickly as it spread out of its mouth. When it touched the leaves, the tree branches, the flames burnt the tree within seconds. Naruto loosened his grip on the tree, before jumping away from the incoming flames. His back was pressed against the tree. Planted against tree's trunk, Naruto was forced to drop into all fours, to avoid a flying kunai hurled straight toward his forehead. The kunai punched through tree's trunk within the blink of an eye. It pierced through the tree's trunk, leaving a gaping hole before going through to hit another tree. Naruto didn't get the chance to breathe smoothly after avoiding the kunai as he was forced to channel chakra through his legs to make a quick jump. The right foot of one of his clones just whisked below his, slamming into the tree's trunk. There was a loud cracking sound when the foot crashed into the tree's trunk. It completely tore through the tree, breaking it. Naruto flashed away, landing in a clearing. A clone flashed behind him, twisting while lifting up its right foot. Without even looking, Naruto twisted, facing up before ducking under the strike. He wanted to catch the foot that nearly hit him, but before he could catch it, another clone flashed just below him, on its knees, and drove a punch straight toward his back. The punch connected, sending him flying into the air. Naruto was thankful that he was in sage mode, otherwise he would have been broken, his spine possibly. When gravity started to pull him down, he tried to regain his balance so that he could land on both feet. Once he landed on the ground, he closed his eyes, did a couple of hand seals, before holding a single hand seal with his left, and then waved his right hand, whilst twisting around. Within seconds, the ground started to shake slowly, powerful gusts of wind started to pick up, twisting around. The trees around became pulled, branches being slammed sides to sides while leaves were being torn apart. Sage Art Fury. The winds began to twist around, all around Naruto. There was so much force that the trees began to be uprooted from the ground. The winds were just hitting in all directions, tearing through the trees. Within a minute, every tree within a 100 m radius was uprooted from the ground. Naruto just stood still, with an expressionless look on his face. He was merely disappointed that even after all the practice he has gone through, this was the best he could do. Natural energy was powerful, it was the life of nature itself. The trees, the waters, all natural forms had this energy. The earth itself could only survive because of this power. It was powerful enough that some jutsu that are too powerful are called natural disasters. He wanted to recreate these natural disasters. It was possible, by entering sage mode, he becomes one with nature. He could feel it. He could see it. He could see all the trees, their support structure. Causing the natural energy in the atmosphere to go berserk was possible. The scale was just the troubling effect. Are you trying to get the village think it is under attack? Jiraiya asked, jumping through the fallen trees. It looked like a tsunami had just hit the surrounding, but it didn't seem to have touched anything within touching distance of Naruto. Naruto glanced at the Sannin through the corner of his eyes and then settled down in a meditative position. Trying to perfect a jutsu, but truly, invoking natural disasters is proving to be difficult. I have learned to disrupt the wind and the earth, he said before closing his eyes, gathering natural energy. Jiraiya didn't envy the fact that Naruto has learned Senjutsu and achieved the perfect sage mode before he could. No, he was happy that Naruto was able to do something he could not. The blonde had even managed to learn the Rasengan far quicker than he could. Of course, he'd only been able to execute it with the help of a clone back then, but now he had better control of his chakra. He didn't need two minds to multitask. The Sannin walked over to Naruto, then stopped just in front of him before sitting down in the same manner as the blonde. We have to talk. About? Naruto asked. Is it about why you returned so quickly? Jiraiya nodded. I have learned something useful about Orochimaru's current location and status. I know he is terribly weak and is not moving, but I don't know where he is specifically located. But I have been told it is somewhere within the Sound Country. Sasuke is also there with him. My contacts were able to give me the general location of someone who knows. I have handed everything to Tsunade, but left a copy at your house. You sounded so serious earlier, I thought you wanted to talk to me about something very serious. Jiraiya stared at Naruto for a moment before releasing a long breath. It depends on how you look at it, but it is about Sasuke and his future. What about it? What do you think? Naruto opened both his eyes, staring back at Jiraiya. The issue of his former teammate was something he tried not to think about, because it really made him angry at how stupid he had been. He could compete with the Uchiha, and even better him in a battle, but when it came to the love of Konoha, there was no competition. At these days, Naruto no longer even cared. He didn't bother thinking about trying to be loved by the villagers. Flashback. Naruto was lying on the roof of a town within the Earth Country, staring at the bright grin of the moon and the twinkling bright of the stars. There was something to gaze upon, a sense of natural beauty to admire, but down in this world, there was but treachery, backstabbing, hate, and some form of love. The only person Naruto could say had truly loved him was the Sandaime, but the old man had lied to him too many times. He'd kept the truth from him. He was sad that the only person who had loved him was dead, but personally, he no longer held the old man in the same breath as before. After all, he might have had some peace when younger if the Sandaime had been forthcoming. He would have known why he was hated. He wouldn't have wondered if he was truly the spawn of the devil, or his parents had merely abandoned him because they didn't want him. Some kids were mean. They could tell you that. They could tell you nobody loved you. Nobody would ever love. Even your parents abandoned you, because they didn't love you and hated you. If he had known the truth, he would have been at peace, knowing that mother and father had loved him, but died for the miserable people who now tormented him. Naruto, Jiraiya said, nudging him over his right shoulder. He glanced at the Sannin, and then went back to his staring contest with the stars. He held no contempt for the Sannin. There was no blood ties, no relations, and the man didn't owe him anything. He'd been merely his father's sensei, nothing more. What? The Sannin glanced at him nervously for a couple of moments before seemingly shrugging. I know you are a little mad that the truth was hidden from you, but we must talk about this and how it affects your relationship with Konoha. Of course, that all has to do with your mental state. What do you think? From what I have seen since we left Konoha, you'd be mad that the very same people your father died to protect are the ones to make the life of his only son a misery. I understand that, and I am not going to excuse their actions. But it is not a hopeless situation. People can change. They can be changed. Before they wouldn't have done anything for you, but at the Chunin exams, they clapped hands for you because you did well. If you continue to do well, they will eventually appreciate your existence and worth. Hatred won't do you any good. But if you become hopeful, you live a free life. What was the sage even saying? No, was he even qualified to be called a sage? What nonsense are you sprouting, sensei? Naruto found himself surprised that he actually uttered those words. In fact, he was even more shocked at how easy it was for them to slip out through his lips. You are right that I am mad. You are right that hatred won't do me any good. But you are telling me the same shit that the old man used to tell me. I must show how good I am. I must work better to impress them. For what? I don't owe the people of Konoha anything. I don't really feel like trying to impress them so they can look at me better and acknowledge me. They are the ones who are wrong. At this point, I don't really care what they think about me, he smiled sadly. I just want to live my life, be selfish a bit, do the things that make me happy instead of being a sacrifice. Of course, this could all be the anger talking. I've often had to deal with my darkness when wielding the Kyuubi's chakra. The hate within it will drive me insane if I don't deal with my emotions, and this really doesn't help. End of flashback. Sighing deeply, Jiraiya responded. It cannot be forgotten that Sasuke betrayed this village. While he isn't listed as a missing nin, he is going to become one soon. If you fail to retrieve him this time, he will be marked as a missing nin. But his presence in the village will add to another dimension that may influence your status. Nothing that concerns me as things stand, Naruto said with a shrug. But you are saying that I will be tasked with going to find Sasuke. What of Orochimaru? He has to die, Jiraiya said in a flat tone. There is no team better suited for this mission than Team 7. Kakashi possesses the Sharingan, so he should negate any advantages. But your personal mission is to track the woman named Girin. With your sensory ability in Sage Mode, you are a far better sensor than anyone in this village, at least as far as I am concerned. Once you have found her, you have to bring her back to Konoha or at least get the information we need out of her. Another test. He could simply fail the mission because he had no intentions of breathing the same air as Sasuke. Perhaps Danzo was a visionary. The man had said something like this would happen. And to prove his loyalties to Konoha, he would have to succeed on this one. If his interactions with Itachi were any indication, the man would jump in joy, internally at least, if his younger brother was returned to Konoha. But there was still another issue. What happens after he is brought back? Sasuke only wants to kill his brother. And he apparently has no love for Konoha, or I could be wrong. Either way, he is not going to simply put on the village's headband and become a loyal shinobi once more. There are methods that have been prepared, Jiraiya said. I'm going to find more information regarding the Akatsuki. I also spoke to the toads regarding giving you the key to open the Kyuubi's cage. Once we have found a secure way to handle things, they will release it. Of everything you have said so far, this is far most important, to me personally, Naruto stated in a calm tone. My few ninjutsu skills are still lacking, but I will improve in due time. The only thing I know to do are barriers, which was simple. But other seals are rather complex. Jiraiya smiled. You are your mother's son, I'm sure you will eventually get it together, the Toad Sage said confidently. Do you have anything to ask of me? Like what? Why we are allowed to walk into Iwa's trap or even show that we are following current events. Tell me, Sensei, what is really happening between Iwagakure and Kumogakure? It was a sad situation that was likely to bring the shinobi world into war once more. Some people did not change. Although IWA has not gone on with its tendency to invade small villages, Kumogakure had started this one. But then again, it could simply be that the Hidden Stone was merely still trying to rebuild its strength from the heavy losses of the previous wars. The cloud, predictably, had struck first. The unfortunate event was that it had attacked the wrong village. Unlike Konoha, IWA was not going to just stand still. I have already told you the actions that Kumo has taken against Konoha that went unpunished because they would easily use the threat of war against us, and the old man had become tired of all the wars that he would simply just bow to avoid it, Jiraiya stated in a serious tone. In their attack of IWA when they failed, IWA reacted by hiring the Akatsuki to attack Kumo's Jinchuriki. The Akatsuki succeeded, captured her, and then even went past the lightning borders. But the Reikage and his brother quickly pursued and caught up to them before retrieving their Jinchuriki. Only one member of the Akatsuki was killed. IWA didn't seem to care they had delivered the message to Kumo. When Kumo made threats, the Tsuchikage reminded the Reikage that he'd only hired 2 mercenaries who managed to walk into his village, take his Jinchuriki, and he'd only suffered some casualties in that battle. Since then, Kumo and IWA shinobi can't meet. They've now been battling for strategic positions in case a war breaks out. In your mission, Tsunade wanted to send capable shinobi that IWA didn't know about. Just to show them that we have more skilled shinobi and are watching. Whether you fought or not wouldn't have mattered. But the main idea was to show IWA that we are watching and will take action. Of course, IWA will try to turn its attention on us, but we know both won't work together. And Kumo? When I went there, I thought I could reason with the Reikage, but he didn't listen to me, Jiraiya said with disappointment. The Akatsuki knows more, and there are suggestions that even Kumogakure has hired them. They were mercenaries, they don't have loyalties. They work for anyone who pays. What is troubling is that 2 of their members had enough power to walk into Kumo, fight and defeat a Jinchuriki with full control of her Biju's power. They are also a group of highly skilled S-rank criminals. We cannot overlook them. And we want to neutralize their effect in any war that may occur. A life of missions, it was unprecedented, for him at least, but nothing that could be avoided. He was a shinobi, and to grow, to become what he needed to become, he had to get out more, he had to do what was required of a shinobi even if it meant doing certain things that the naive him would have never thought of doing. Jiraiya had already gone through him. His fellow sage was a little more idealistic and hopeful than him, though. Naruto looked at things realistically, not through the microscope of dreams and illusions as the Sannin chose. It was nice to hope. It gave you reason to continue marching in this cold and miserable world. Maybe he would think differently had his parents remained alive, but they were not. They were dead. Kushina and Minato were dead. He was alive. Alone in this world. Hated by the people his parents died to protect. Thinking of somewhere far? Naruto looked down from the tree branch he lay. There was Sakura standing below, looking up at him. His new teammate was also around, but unlike last time when he attacked him, he was just laying low. Kakashi was late, as usual. There were just certain things that perhaps would never change. Even with him, there were things he was not going to change about himself because they defined who he was. Slowly shaking his head, Naruto responded. Something like that, he said. Jiraiya had said she was trained by Tsunade. No doubt she was fighting like the old hag. He had seen her fight Orochimaru, and he knew though a medic, she was destructive. The fighting style suited Sakura. She lacked stamina, but her low chakra reserves made it possible for her to gain complete control over it. I see everyone has arrived, Kakashi said, appearing from the tree shades, holding his beloved book. Sai and Naruto, come down, the Jonin ordered. Both Naruto and Sai flashed into the clearing. Sakura stared at the pale teenager who just gave her an expressionless look, cold, devoid of any emotion. She wanted to say it was definitely not the look of Sasuke, but then she grimly remembered, before he left, Sasuke had held nothing but contempt in his eyes, that even when he appeared to be looking at you, you realized he was looking past you. Okay, Kakashi drawled, his visible eye glancing around the three. Sai is a former Anbu. He is ranked as a Jonin, and will be our teammate from now on since we have lost one member. I remain team captain. You two can welcome our new teammate. We will meet later on for our first training session. And then once our teammate is in rhythm, we can talk about requesting missions. But with current events, it was unlikely that they would have to request a mission. Sakura was strong enough and he didn't have to worry about Naruto and Sai. They would be dished out to the village before they could even settle because there was trouble outside the borders of the Fire Nation. Naruto smiled, looking at Shizen, who was busy with the papers in Tsunade's office. The Godame was there, busy with other things, but Naruto focused on the black-haired medic. He had seen her fight before, but he never quite noticed her like this. She was always the one who was taking care of Tsunade when she was drunk or bunking work because she was tired or in one of her moody days. He wondered, did she have someone in her life? Tsunade was lonely, perhaps even sexually frustrated. He liked to believe it was not the same for Shizen. You're having indecent thoughts, aren't you? Tsunade asked with a glare. Naruto's eyes glanced at the blonde Hokage for a second before looking back at Shizen. My mind is innocent, the first am merely admiring Shizen's work ethics, he said with a smile. While the Godame Hokage scoffed, Shizen glanced at him, smiling. Even she knew the undertone in Naruto's words. Things had changed, huh? Jiraiya had not been wrong in his report. The blonde had become a truly likable young man. Don't tell me you are getting into this, Shizen! Tsunade exclaimed. What? Shizen responded with fake ignorance. She then smiled. I was merely thinking how Naruto's face looks more like his mother than father, she said innocently. Naruto laughed when Tsunade glared at the black-haired woman. I should take you for a drink one of these days, Shizen. You can tell me all about how much of a slave driver the Godame Hokage is and just how much I look like my mother while I praise your dedication and passion to your job and this village, he said in a light tone. That would be great, I could use a drink, things have been hectic these days. I can imagine it is tense out there, Naruto said before turning to face the Godame Hokage. You wanted to see me? Tsunade blinked. The switch was quick. His expression had changed, so had his tone. There were new things she was learning about this Naruto with each day. But it still concerned her. Yes, she then paused, glancing at Shizen, just wondering if the woman was serious about having a drink with Naruto. She then shook her head and faced Naruto. I'm assigning you to an S-rank mission, but it should really be A rank. It is only S-rank because of its significance, your status, and the potential danger you may face. We are not sure about the strength of your strength. But she has to be at least an A rank, she said, handing Naruto a scroll. The blonde took it, but he did not open it. You are going to find this woman named Guren and apprehend her, bring her back to this village. If she talks before you even return, you will be required to stay where you are and Team 7 will join you. An Umbu team will be dispatched to collect her. The information that she has to give will lead us to Orochimaru and Sasuke. So, be ready for anything. When do I leave? Tomorrow, Tsunade said. You have at least a month to find her. I imagine that she could have moved already. If that is the case, you'll need to inform us whilst getting in contact with Jiraiya's people. Along the way, you might come across IWA or Kumo shinobi. Avoid them if possible. I want to remind you that the outside world does not know about your status as a Jinchuriki. For now, we want to keep it that way. Of course. But Naruto, if it cannot be helped and you must fight to get out of your way of a difficult situation, don't be afraid to use any force necessary. But if that is the case, try to eliminate witnesses. We don't want to alert Orochimaru of our movements or IWA. Understood. Dismissed. Naruto bowed and departed from the office along with the scroll he had received from the Godame Hokage. Naruto-kun, have you come to test your youthful flames with us once more? Niji quickly twirled around, hearing that loud voice of his sensei. The man was asking, but he was already dashing toward the blonde in speed. He watched in fascination as Naruto held out both hands to block a flying kick from the green beast. When the kick connected with the blonde's hands, he exploded in a cloud of smoke. Guy's eyes flashed toward him, grinning widely. Your sensei is always energetic, isn't he? Naruto suddenly asked, standing behind him. Niji only narrowed his eyes. How the blonde got behind him was a mystery to him. One would underestimate Guy because of his antics, but Niji had seen the man fight. He was easily one of Konoha's most powerful shinobi, without question or doubt. It was not surprising that the Jonin was first to notice the blonde behind him before he could. Frustratingly, yes, Niji more or less groaned, just thinking that he was going to get challenged by Lee. Of course, his mad teammate never went all out with him. He had been frustrated learning just how fast and powerful Lee was in the Chunin exams. It was a pity that he had fought the wrong opponent. But there was no doubt, the genin had been stronger than him, even when he claimed victory in many of their sparring sessions. Naruto smiled. I feel your pain, he said quietly. I even came prepared because I knew he would attack while asking questions. You cannot make the mistake of exciting your friends. Niji nodded. Lee was like. Anyone who fought better was going to become his eternal rival. As he was. I didn't know you were close to Guy-sensei. Naruto shrugged. I wouldn't say close, but I have sparred with him once. He is the best taijutsu user in the village. I wanted to learn some things from him. Not from Lee then. If it had been, I would have known about it. I'm sure he would have been shouting about it every day. Tenten cut in, staring curiously at her green teammate who was busy decimating a dummy with his kicks and punches. How many did he destroy in a day? His budget, and Guy's, just went away in those things. Then again, she spent overly more in her weapons. She then glanced at Naruto coming to fetch Niji. Naruto shook his head. Hell no, your teammate cannot laugh. I was already asking why I was paired with him before we even left the village, he said with a smile. I came for your sensei. Good luck getting out without being forced to fight. He seems rather motivated today. Lost the challenge to Kakashi-sensei? Apparently, Tenten said with a shrug. I'll see you tomorrow, Niji, she said, waving her right hand. She was merely leaving because Guy was coming. And Lee appeared to be following from behind. The green beast was upon them in a couple of moments. Not in the mood today? He asked, a bit seriously. Naruto shook his head. I would rather not get injured when I have to leave tomorrow for a mission. I came for the weights. I want to try them. Guy grinned. Lee will have a truly spirited rival, he said with joy. Did you say you were going to collect them? You said you'd buy them for me? I did. Guy seemed to think about it for a moment. I have some at home. Come later and fetch them. We still have some things to do with Lee. You can join us if you like. Didn't the man hear what he just said? He was going out on a mission and couldn't afford to be part of any of Guy's ridiculous training regimes. He didn't want to break anything that would make him sit this mission. I'll join you when I return, Guy. Perhaps then I will have become used to the weights. When he was leaving, Niji followed him. The Hyuga was silent along for a couple of moments before asking, Team mission? Solo, Naruto answered. Naruto glanced at the Hyuga for a moment before looking at the road ahead. He didn't have anything to say to the Hyuga and the silence are comfortable. It didn't last long as Niji opened his mouth to ask. Why do you need weights? From what I saw, you are already fast enough. Naruto shook his head. Not fast enough, the blonde said. I turn here, he said, waving his right hand as he walked away from Niji. If Naruto ever forgot Irika, he would be doing injustice. While the man had resented and loathed him at every end, he was the only person who came from contempt to love. The man had been willing to take a bullet for him. Mizuki could have killed him. He would have ended his dreams. But he stood up for him, with no ulterior motives, and he was forever thankful that the man had showed him love in such a moment in his life. Still, he had been stupid. How had he even allowed himself to be duped by that moron called Mizuki? That man had never cared for him. Sighing, Naruto glanced at the academy teacher for a moment before staring at his ramen. It was fine when there were people who valued your life, your existence. Could he trust anyone else with all his life? The answer was no. Laughable as it was, he could only trust the Kyuubi to save his life. Even then, it was because the Bijou needed him to be alive, for its own survival. But the people in this village would always think about Konoha first. Even with Tsunade. Despite her good intentions, if it came to it, she would choose her village. You should come to my house for dinner one day. All we have ever eaten is ramen, Naruto said to the Chunin. You're probably going to serve me ramen even at your house. Naruto smiled. Perhaps in the old days. But I have learned that you need to eat other foods to maintain a healthy body. As a shinobi, the condition of my body determines my longevity and my ability to withstand stressful moments. A strong will doesn't result in a strong body, the blonde said. Iruka smiled, proud. He was proud when Naruto became a genin, although in an unconventional method, but he was still proud. He had been proud when Naruto performed better than expected at the Chunin exams. And now, he had not only grown in strength but in mind as well. The Sandaime would have been proud as well. It was a pity he was not alive to see this moment. You'll tell me. Please bring a girlfriend, Naruto said to Iruka. Iruka turned to face the genin with a raised eyebrow. Shouldn't I be the one to ask that of you? Naruto just smiled. I just thought I must see who wakes you up in the morning. To love and to be loved, who doesn't want that? There are certainly things that male friends cannot give you, but you get them from female companions. Before Iruka could respond, Ayame asked, with a curious look on her face. And what is that, Naruto? The blonde smiled, and then motioned for her to lean over. He whispered something into her ear and she blushed before walking away without a response. He only laughed seeing her reaction before turning to Iruka. I don't have a lover. And I just returned to the village. But admittedly, love is not something I am looking after. I am still young, there is still time, but you are not getting younger, sensei. Someone gave birth to you, you need to continue with that tradition. The following day. Naruto already had his bag on his back. He was, nevertheless, not going to hurry. It was not a quick mission anyway. And looking at things, there was no call for him to do things in haste. He was not even against the idea of doing things slowly to give himself some time away from the hidden leaf. He still could not come to love this village and its people. He could not force himself, because really, he didn't want to do so. Being here was just tiring. If the word gets out that Minato was his father, a comedic situation was surely going to rise and it would be amusing to watch. With the bag on his back, and one hand holding it firmly to ensure it doesn't fall because of his movements, Naruto jumped back slightly, and landed on both feet. A second later, Konohamaru lunged at him, driving a right jab towards his gut. He caught the punch and gripped it tightly while slowly twisting. This caused the boy to cry out in pain. When he let go of him, Konohamaru glared at him. This is frustrating, he exclaimed. Naruto sighed. Well, at least with this boy, things were not awkward unlike they were with Iruka. Perhaps things had worked well because of the past dynamics in their relationship. He had been the disobedient student who had to be followed after on everything, and Iruka was the teacher willing to go to the extra mile for him. But there was no longer a need for that. You need to learn to control that frustration. When you get frustrated, you start to act recklessly, and that leaves you open for danger. The shinobi out there will kill you. Naruto said this in a cold tone, releasing a bit of killing intent to drive his point across. You need to remember that if you meet a powerful opponent, and you are not strong enough, you will die. I know it is not something you want to hear, Konohamaru, but you are a shinobi now, you need to know this. In my first real mission, if our opponent had been intent on killing us, I would not have returned to this village. To survive, you need power, and friends who can have your back when you need it. A loud mouth will only get you killed. Konohamaru massaged his head. Naruto was saying a lot of things. It was not like he was not getting it. He did get it, but what did have to do with anything? Besides, Naruto was being a little harsher than normal. When the blonde gave him a hard glare, he was forced to nod in agreement. I get you, he said. You said you teach me a new jutsu. I'm going to show you the Rasengan. The jutsu is not elemental but purely chakra manipulation. It will be difficult and I won't be around to tell you what to do. I have come to learn that experience is the best teacher, and there is nothing that motivates you better than failure, of course, if you are mentally strong enough, he smiled. Today and tomorrow, a clone of mine will beat into you the knowledge you require to learn the jutsu. Later that day. Intel did suggest that Naruto was a stamina freak, but he could not figure out why and how the blonde could keep running for hours without taking rest. It was almost as if he was running away from something. He couldn't have seen or sensed him since he was not on land. For Sai, there was a limit to how much more he could keep following the blonde. He didn't have unlimited chakra. It was nice being a Jinchuriki. He'd yet to see anything that made him think that Danzo was true to say there was no better weapon than the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki. The problem there was that since he has seen Naruto, there has not been a hint of his use of the Kyuubi's power. Danzo could not even get the secret file that the Godame had in her possession containing Naruto's stats. Think. Sai's thoughts were cut off when a firm hand gripped him on his neck from behind. It was such a firm grip that came out of nowhere. His heart raced, he couldn't twist his neck to see who it was. He was flying on his bird. Who could have the ability to get behind him, having even flown to him like that? He narrowed his eyes below. Naruto was still running. Who could it be? Sai felt himself being picked up into the air, his bird bust into black ink, and gravity started pull them down. The hand did not let him go. Sai face down, closed his eyes. His body hit tree branches, snapping past them. He did not flinch while being slapped across his face and the rest of his body. Nor when his body brutally slammed to the ground, face first, creating a crater. He only winced in pain when a foot suddenly crashed into his back, nearly breaking his spine. He held back a cry. He had been subjected to many tortures and pain, but it didn't mean he was immune to pain. He was not afraid of death, but it didn't mean he was ready for it. Not in this manner. He was flipped to the side, eyes still closed. A foot slammed onto his chest, causing him to cough out blood and gasp for air. He felt something snap as he was buried to the ground. When his eyes opened, to get a look at his assailant, he found Naruto standing above him, glaring down at him with such cold eyes that would have made a lesser man flinch. After a second he smiled, but didn't remove his foot off him. He just leaned in, staring at him in the eyes. Sai, he started slowly, tilting his head to the side. For a moment I thought you were an enemy. In this kind of world, you can never be too careful. Aren't you glad I am a kind person? I could have plunged a kunai through your chest before I even recognized you? Naruto was not an idiot, Sai realized. He understood what the blonde was saying. Sai wasn't even supposed to be here. If he had died, the blonde could bother turning him to Konoha and then claiming he hadn't known it was him. Or he could just keep quiet about it. Only Danzo knew he was here. It would create a problem if the Hokage knew he was here. Are you going to kill me? Naruto just continued smiled. Now why would I kill a fellow Konoha shinobi? We are teammates, are we not? Unless, of course, you have other motives, but certainly if I press down a bit, I could crush your chest and then burn your body to ashes, but I am not that kind of person, he said causally before asking. Aren't you supposed to be in Konoha? Are you going to let me go? I'm having trouble breathing and I'm bleeding internally, Sai stated the obvious. Naruto blinked, feigning surprise. You were speaking so naturally, it slipped my mind, he said. But he still did not remove his foot off Sai, he just loosened the pressure. Speak, he ordered. Kakashi-sensei was sent out on a mission just after you left. Team 7 activities were thus suspended. Danzo-sama sent me out to give you some information, Sai answered, a bit too quickly. How did you do it? Naruto smiled, before bursting into a cloud of smoke. Sai blinked in surprise. A clone? How had that happened? Naruto hadn't made a clone while he was watching him. And that still didn't explain how he was able to get in behind him without him knowing. A shinobi skilled in assassination could do that, but how he had flown. You're not a sensory type, at least in terms of chakra. You're good at keeping surveillance, nonetheless, Naruto said, walking up to the clearing. He leaned against a tree, folded his hands across his chest, and watched Sai recover, before continuing to speak. I guess you know my mission and Danzo has information about my target. Sai nodded and watched Naruto carefully. He was not going to explain how he had managed to do what he did, Sai realized. But it was alright. He would figure out the secrets. At least now, he has learned that he needed to keep both eyes open when sleeping, and never blink in the presence of the blonde. Danzo was going to be impressed. Much more over the fact that the blonde seemed a bit receptive to the help from his master. He removed a scroll and threw it toward the blonde, who caught it. Danzo-sama's information is more specific. That woman you are going after, she has a rare bloodline. But also a lot of information about Orochimaru. What does he want in exchange? Nothing for now. Danzo-sama is merely interested in seeing Sasuke Uchiha return to the Hidden Leaf. If you can do that, he will see it as a debt paid. Naruto held back a snort. Power-hungry fool. He just wanted to control Sasuke and probably thought that if he had control over Sasuke's Sharingan, he would have control over him, or the Kyuubi. But there was no need for Danzo to go that far, in using Sasuke for that at least. He could do it on his own. He had been informed of Danzo's little secret. He was just not going to tell. Besides, he had a remedy for it, should it ever be attempted to be used against him. Without responding, Naruto pocketed the scroll and then started to walk away from Sai. There was no need to say anything. If Sai was tracking him down, he would know about it. For now, he was free. He could return to a slow pace. It was troubling that he had been forced to run when he had not even planned on doing it. 3 days later. There were times one thought that certain events were linked to the other. In this world, where power meant everything, actions brought consequences. Perhaps it was not the events that were linked, but rather the behavior of humans. People may live in different worlds, follow different cultures, but fundamentally, humans were all the same. Both Kumo and IWA were similar, and their actions just proved that people were not truly different. Sighing, Naruto glanced at the cup in front of him, and then stared into the clear skies. He was in a town within the land of canyons. Guren was still some distance away. He was not sure he would even meet her a day or tomorrow. There was no hurry either. Tsunade had given him time to complete this duty. Of course, there was the danger of coming across shinobi with evil intentions. He had been warned as such. But at least he was confident that no one in Konoha was following him, not even Danzo had his rats on his tail. Jiraiya would have warned Tsunade against such actions. Perhaps this was also another test for him. Just to see if he could be faithful while left on his own devices. No doubt, in those secret Umbu files, he was marked an S-rank flight risk. Are you sure you should be enjoying the comfort? Naruto glanced at his right. A man was walking up to him. He was a little bulky, had long black hair. The man stood on his right for a moment, taking in the air before sitting down on the rooftop. If you cannot be settled, you can never have the peace of mind. But I must admit, I'm not fully briefed on what is happening in this world that matters between Kumo and IWA. Admittedly, he was honestly not that bothered by it. Perhaps it was because he was most concerned about his health than the battles of other people. They had a war to fight. A score to settle, they could settle it themselves. Getting involved would not stop the war, it just increased in the number of sacrifices and the amount of blood that will be spilled if a war eventually broke out. Jiraiya would be disappointed if he knew such thoughts. Still, Naruto smiled. He was not looking for approval from his sensei. Each man had his mind, and each with his ideals to follow. It was the thing called freedom. But freedom in the shinobi world was such a foreign concept. Well, you were not focused on trying to discover what was happening. Jiraiya-sama would have been willing to share the details had you been a willing recipient. Such news would have taken away my focus on my training, Naruto answered with a shrug. How did things go? Getting in was honestly difficult. I thought I was going to die, the man responded, glancing at Naruto at the corner of his eyes. But there is nothing in Uzushio. There are no survivors, it is just ruins, a memory of a once peaceful clan. Naruto frowned. He had been a little hopeful that there may be something. But it did look like the masks were the only things he could treasure, aside from the few Injutsu scrolls that his mother left behind. It was sad. Maddening even. His clan had only been peaceful. They had never been involved in wars. Perhaps Mito's entrance in the shinobi world and sealing the Kyuubi had threatened many. The Uzumaki had not required fighting to subdue a bijou. It was just simply the use of their chakra chains and then the bijou would be sealed away. Despite being such peaceful people, the end had not been gracious. It was ruthlessly cruel. It exposed the mentality of this world, just how treacherous it was. Of course, treachery could be on the part of the Hidden Leaf. But Naruto was not going to focus on that. Disappointing, Naruto said expressionlessly. But such is the world we live in. I must still visit it. I never got the chance to do so in my time with Jiraiya. Perhaps he was afraid I would decide to settle there rather than return to the Leaf. Well, even I had doubted you'd actually return to the Leaf. You were ordered to return and you ignored that order, the man said. You will be happy to know that you are in Iwa's bingo books. But it is nothing flattering. C-rank shinobi. No serious jutsu. Aside from the Rasengan and summoning jutsu. It doesn't help that your official rank is Genin. It does appear that they still don't know that you're a Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi. That is because it was something Konoha held secret to avoid problems. Jinchuriki are still high commodity, but it is not going to last long. Very soon, they will know the truth. And my status is going to change once I have handled a couple of missions, Naruto stated. Perhaps another one of Tsunade's reason to give him these missions was to test him, and then give him the ranking based on mission success, after accessing the difficulty of each mission. What is not in the bingo book is that IWA suspects you for being a Jinchuriki. I assume their reason for withholding this information is because they want to test it, and if found to be true, they will act in their best interest. Naruto smiled. The Kyuubi was still the strongest Bijuu. It did look like he was probably the only Jinchuriki who could not use the full power of his Bijuu. But perhaps that was mainly due to his seal. There was no advanced seal than the one used by his father, a product of the Uzumaki. That will surely get Konoha panicking if they become bold with their intentions, Naruto said. Can you come to Konoha? Are you sure that is safe? You are not a shinobi of any village, nor a rogue shinobi. But perhaps I could be accused of plotting things, he said with a sigh. Normal contact is fine then. One more thing before I leave, the man said in a serious tone. Itachi is on the move. His condition is still fine, but I assume his eyesight is only getting worse. Sasuke is probably still with Orochimaru. He is, Naruto confirmed. Intel from Konoha says so? The problem is finding out their location. My mission now is to try to find that location by tapping into someone who was once close to Orochimaru. He stood up and looked around the town for a couple of seconds. Go to IWA, find out what you can speak to Jiraiya's contacts, return here in 3 weeks. I think I should be done by then. Is it that difficult? Naruto shook his head. I want to make a stop elsewhere. Naruto. Hearing this dark, hateful voice that called him from within, Naruto came to a halt in his movements, stopping atop of a tree. There was nothing but a huge forest around him. He could not sense a single shinobi within a close distance. He was safe. Nobody could see him from here. He allowed himself to fall from the tree, landing on the ground before placing both his hands inside his pockets as he started walking slowly. What? Where are you going? Naruto raised a curious eyebrow before smiling. I see, even if I cannot sense it, you can do it. Sage mode improves my capabilities exponentially, but when it comes to picking up the location of another Bijuu, you do it better. Kurama didn't like where this was going. He could sense the sandbai and they were heading straight to it. It was going to take some time, but there was now no doubt that Naruto was heading straight to it. It could not be for good reasons. There was no doubt that the blonde wanted something and he was afraid to conclude what his mind was telling him it was. He was plotting something and it was likely going to end up as a disaster for him if Konoha ever found out about this. The Hidden Leaf didn't know, and it was likely going to end up being suspicious if it ever found out. You are after all going back for the sandbai. Of course I must thank you for it. If it was not because I was using up to 6 taels worth of your chakra, I would probably not have noticed it. But in that mode, I sensed it. I was with Jiraiya, so I made no noise about it. I'd hoped I would return for it, Naruto stated. Does it bother you? Of course it does. Do you think I am willing to share a host with the sandbai? If you have me, you don't need another Bijuu. Naruto laughed. The Kyuubi was truly a prideful Bijuu. And it was not ashamed of it. The Bijuu didn't waste a chance to remind him of its power or what it was capable of doing. Same reason you tried sabotaging my progress with Senjutsu. I have already told you that your power will be used, but I don't want to ever depend on it, that I cannot save my skin without tapping into it. Perhaps in your view, humans are just hateful things that only see Bijuus as a source of power. I won't deny that I value your power. I will use it. There are many lengths I will reach that will require me to master it. You may hate me for it, but I can't do without it. We are both stuck in this situation. I would rather you didn't hate me though. You are the only one who has been with me since my birth. You know my internal struggle, you have saved my life in many situations. For such a lifesaver, I appreciate you. But I still need the sandbai, for what is ahead. And I am going to take it in. You cannot stop it. No one can. At this stage, my path to it is unchallenged. And no one in Konoha will ever know unless I tell them about it. With what skill? I'll admit that my few ninjutsu skills are lacking, but basic things are simple to do once you study them hard enough, Naruto said with a slight shrug. Naturally, I would never allow Konoha to know how good it is. They would have me under constant surveillance. You just need to be happy that you will get someone you can talk to. Someone who can understand you better. You won't share the same cell, but I am sure you will be able to get together and talk. Other Bijuus are like siblings, aren't they? And you are the strongest, you should be able to keep the sandbai at bay while I learn a stronger seal. Kurama snorted. Like hell I will do that. Naruto smiled. If you don't, the sandbai will be the one take control over my body, and consequently you. For a moment, Kurama thought of cursing Naruto. But he just smiled. I'd prefer the idiot you. Manipulating that brat into taking more power he could not handle was easier. My escape from this damn place would have been closer. But being inside someone who is at least smart is not much of a humiliation. Besides, you are planning something, aren't you? I only plan on being the greatest Uzumaki and shinobi to have ever walked the face of this earth. Nagato expressionlessly stared into the waters through the eyes of Tendu, just wondering if things were going to be alright. Or at least if things would not come to bite them with how things were at this stage in the elemental nations. A war was coming, and he had been milking the great villages for money. He had his reasons, but he had not thought that they would be discovered so quickly. Jiraiya had come here, his former sensei. He had found them, made some realizations, and then was able to escape, half dead as he was. It was still a case for concern. He'd not wavered at the thought of killing his former sensei. But the man still got away. If secrets had to be protected in the most extreme way, Konoha's complete destruction would do it for him. This is going to be a problem, Conan said to him, looking at the spot where the toads had dragged Jiraiya. Nagato nodded. We will send a message to Konoha about this. They will soon know that Hanzo is dead, and if the other shinobi villages know that we are located here, there is bound to be movements into our borders, especially from IWA. Kumogakure may even be more inclined to attack us now given our missions against them. History will try to repeat, Conan said. If it happened as Nagato said, the great nations would try to take over this nation. They will fight in their lands. Kumo and IWA were already making noise in neighboring nations to secure routes for when they go to war. The rain has always been used as a battleground for wars. It was going to suffer once more if they did not get ahead of this. I will raise defenses, but what if Konoha attacks? Itachi's loyalty is still questionable. It would be preferable to send him to the Leaf to discover what movements they are making. Regardless, if they attempt to attack, we will hit them first, Nagato stated. We will protect the rain at all costs, even if it means we must capture Jinchuriki to get this done. Must I still send Itachi? It would be a good test to his loyalties. Yes. If we find out their actions can lead to trouble, we will assemble and take appropriate action. Conan knew what that meant. Naruto stood on a branch of a tree, watching a huge lake covered in mist. He'd already sent a clone to check it out, and that was a disaster he dared not enter. The mist was not just any mist, it was dangerous, and the clone had gotten lost in itself before dispelling. But he'd learned something. This was, of course, still the general location he had recorded while using the Kyuubi's sharp senses. It was not going to be his first time facing a Bijuu, but second time. This would be different nevertheless. The Sanbai was much more powerful than Shikaku. Still, it was a wonder why no one has been able to find it. The Bijuu has not had an appearance since the Yonde Mizukage, at least as far as Jiraiya had told him. But it was not the only Bijuu missing. Kiri's other Jinchuriki was also missing. Naruto removed his coat and then his t-shirt. The bandages on his arms stretched over his shoulder. He removed them as well, revealing a fully tattooed arm with black ink. His exposed chest was covered by a dark mark of the Uzumaki swirl. I guess I don't have to hide this anymore, he said in thought. Was there a need to even hide it? You never know in the Hidden Leaf, Naruto responded with a shrug. This was going to be a mission. He could protect himself from the mist by becoming a miniature beast. It would be a lot quicker of a method to attract the Bijuu's attention. He didn't think he was going to fail. The Shodai Hokage had done this to all 9 Bijuus, he could do it. And you say you won't even depend on my power, but the first thought you have when facing a difficult task is me. Naruto shrugged, keeping his hands together. It was a necessary thing at this point. He was strong, but he was not going to take the risk of injuring himself or leaving traces of his presence here. He still had another mission he needed to do. There would be questions to answer if he ends up having to need hospital attention from an injury suffered because of extracurricular duties that he was not even supposed to engage. Crimson chakra started bubbling out from within, completely surrounding him. Once 2 tails formed, he dropped into all fours, as he poured out more chakra from the seal. The 3rd and 4th tails started to form. These released a powerful shockwave that tore through the trees around him, creating a crater where he stood. Within a minute, he was no longer Naruto, but a crimson miniature Bijuu with 4 tails. The power that emitted from him was his transformation was complete, caused the ground to shatter once more under the weight. After releasing a growl, he vanished into thin air. He was just running high speed. He went past the mist without suffering and only stopped once he was floating above the waters, standing in front of the Sanbai. It said nothing, nor did it make any movement. Of course it would recognize the power of the Kyuubi. It probably knew they were coming all along. The power of the Kyuubi slowly dispersed as Naruto undid the transformation. He had the Bijuu's attention, and no longer required the Kyuubi's protective powers. Hello, Sanbai. The Bijuu did not say anything but just stared at him with its lone open eyes. But Naruto was not bothered. He just smiled. I know you can hear me. And you probably think that I have come here for your power, to capture you. You are not false if you think that. I have come here for that, but I would rather you willingly allow me to do it than fight. After a moment, the bijou responded in a quiet, yet powerful tone. Why bother asking if you are still going to use force? It is the logical choice, Naruto responded in a flat tone. Using force means that I have to fight you every day. I am already at war with the Kyuubi, and as you can imagine, he is not the easiest to deal with. Between having your cooperation and being in between two bijous, which do you think is best? Aisabu didn't answer the question. He kept quiet, ignoring Kurama's threats that he not allow himself to be captured. He assumed the bijou didn't want him to see him in a pitiful state. After many years, Kurama had been the only bijou to remain uncaptured as all who came to it failed. You already have the strongest power bijou inside of you, what more do you want? Your eyes do not appear to be greedy. Naruto held out his right hand. There is a war that is coming, and the warring villages will soon know about your location, and once they do, they will come for you. If one knows, they both know. It will become a major race, in which all villages will probably try to get involved. Kiri will probably come out of its shadows, claiming that you were originally sold to it, and thus belongs to them. It would just make things worse, and an all-out shinobi world war would break out quickly. When it comes to the hunt of power, shinobi villages will do anything. I want to erase this element by taking you in. If you are not available, it means there is no one who will fight for you. But I won't lie to say I won't use your power. I am a Jinchuriki, I must benefit from that. He paused before asking. Are you going to fight me, or will you willingly take residence in me? On the bright side of things, you get to laugh at the Kyuubi. He is in a rather pitiful position. He spends all his time curled up in poverty despite all his power, and cannot break out, no matter how much he tries. With Kurama and the Sanbai. What? Kurama growled, glaring at the Sanbai. They were somewhere where no human could forcefully enter. Even though he was between them, Naruto could not hear them. I assume your host appeared before me using your power to display that he has control over your power. Unlike Shikaku, I know you are the most powerful and won't attempt to fight you if there is no need, Aisabu stated calmly. But you do have an interesting Jinchuriki. He seems like a nice person, much better than my last host. Kurama snorted. He was not going to ever admit that Naruto was not like Madara or so many humans who only saw power in them. The blonde had even bothered talking to the Sanbai because he appreciated that it was more than just a mass of chakra that needed to be controlled by humans. He was not bad. But Kurama was still not going to admit that. He just closed his eyes and spoke. He has control over my chakra, though not full control. But that is more than enough to defeat you, not to mention he uses sage jutsu. Rarely had Tsunade seen Jiraiya so weak, so vulnerable, looking towards death. The toads had dropped him off. It required both her students to get him on track, to get him inching towards survival. When she beat him towards the inch of his life for peeping, he nearly died. But this was brutal. Chakra rods had pierced through his chest, barely missing his vital organs, but his left lung was punctured. His left arm torn off from the shoulder, his chest had been crushed. Head injuries scared her the most. He looked a bit deformed, as if he'd been bullied by merciless vultures without care for life. She wondered if he would even regain consciousness any time soon, and if he regained, would he even be the same? She made hand movements and an umbu flashed into the room. Call Shikaku and tell him to meet me at the office, now. Hi, Hokage-sama. Jiraiya had gone to a mission to find out more about the Akatsuki and its leader. This mission took him to the rain he was returned moments ago by the toads, just clinging to his life. Tsunade said in a serious tone, while sitting behind her desk. Tsunade needed to say no more. The Sannin was basically the strongest shinobi in the village. The likes of Kakashi could not be compared to the Sannin. For him, to have been beaten to an inch of his life where he had to escape, it was troubling. He'd assumed the Akatsuki was powerful. Their leader at least. He had to be powerful to be able to put a leash on S-rank criminals, with the likes of Orochimaru having been a former member. But who could have thought someone would beat down Jiraiya? What more information do we have? Jiraiya has that information, but he is not conscious at the moment. I would have Inoichi try enter his mind to find out more, but I will wait for a little to allow him to recover. He is in a bad shape. But what the toad said was that the rain is not in a civil war, and the leader of the Akatsuki leads the village. They have also said that he is the wielder of the Rinnegan. Of all these years, everyone has avoided the rain because it was said to be in a civil war. There was the fact that spies never returned from the village. If they returned, they were not able to get past security. But those rumors were exaggerated. The troubling fact was that this person wielded the Rinnegan. Jiraiya had always spoken about the eyes, but she'd paid much mind because it was always his ramblings about the child of prophecy. We have to assume that they won't be happy that he escaped and may attack us, Shikaku said in thought. The village has to be on high alert. Do we inform the others, though? Tsunade shook her head. It will only make things worse. We can only inform Sunagakure. It won't do anything but ally with us. If we inform Kumo, they will attack and IWA won't just stand still. They will move out and the war starts quickly before we have even had the chance to prepare for how we handle it. We will keep things to ourselves, she said in a hardened tone. But the village has to be on maximum alert. We cannot not even allow word of Jiraiya's situation get out. Of course, and then clan heads? They don't need to know, Tsunade was quick to say. But speak to Danzo. Use force if necessary. He was in cohorts with Hanzo. He should have had some knowledge about when things stopped. At least from him, we will be able to get the picture of when the civil war ended, she ordered. Hi. Naruto expected to see someone cruel, not a woman caring for a child. It was almost sad that he had to do this. But this was bound to make things complicated. He needed Guren alive, but it would be difficult if she was fighting back. Playing nice would probably get him killed. The people close to Orochimaru are not known for their kindness. Just because she was showing kindness to the boy she was with didn't mean that she was going to show it to him. Shoving his thoughts to the back of his head, Naruto turned inside. He closed his eyes for a couple of minutes and was forced to snap them open when he sensed projectiles moving toward him. Crystal blades were hurled toward his figure in speed. They all hit him, simultaneously before he disappeared in a puff of smoke. The real Naruto landed on the ground, just below the tree and looked around with a slight frown. Guren suddenly appeared in front of him. A blue crystal blade formed around her arm, as she swiped her right hand towards his face. Naruto took a step back, watching the blade pass his face before slamming into the tree's trunk with his back. Guren took another step forward, swinging her blade across his face once more. Crystal release, crystal lance. Simultaneously, another Guren jumped in above the first clone. She formed a huge blue crystal lance, and then drove it towards Naruto's chest. The first Guren flashed out of the way, clearing the way for the lance, which was aimed straight towards his chest. Naruto channeled chakra into his legs, and then jumped up. He caught the lance between his knees while in midair and then flashed a wind-enhanced kunai straight at Guren's forehead. The kunai hit her in her forehead, and then she collapsed into nothingness, along with the lance. When Naruto landed down, he was forced to fold his hands across his chest when Guren suddenly appeared out of nowhere, in front of him, slightly above the ground, her right foot, swinging towards his chest. When the kick connected with his hands, he winced slightly, feeling that he was hit by something hard. The kick pushed him back into the tree's trunk. The moment he touched the tree with his back, a crystal blade pierced through the tree from the other side. Naruto was forced to bring both his hands behind, to block the tip of the blade from piercing through his back, just about the spine. He had covered his hands with chakra, to give it a bit of defensive capabilities. While the blade was able to pierce through the tree, it didn't cut through his hands. When the Guren in front of him lunged at him once more, Naruto